Columbus, Ohio. This is the CNN New York Times Democratic presidential
Here it
debate.
is. It's the shitty fucking debate.
In the United States and watching around the world, watching us on CNN, CNN International, CNN en Espanol, CNN.com,
Hang on.
the NewYorkTimes.com, CNN's Facebook page, and listening on the Westwood One radio network, Sirius XM satellite.
Yep, it's starting. It's this shit.
I'm Anderson Cooper, moderating tonight's debate along with CNN's Aaron Burnett and New York Times national.
I didn't tweet it out.
We are in Ohio tonight because it's one of the most critical battleground states. Ohio has
Hang on.
all but two
I'm gonna
presidential
switch
winners
to
in every
the
election since
intermission.
1896.
The top 12 Democratic presidential candidates are at their positions behind the podiums. This is a record number of candidates for a presidential primary debate, so to accommodate the large group, there are no opening statements tonight.
Before we begin, a reminder of the ground rules. You'll each receive 75 seconds to answer questions, 45 seconds for responses and rebuttals, and 15 seconds for clarifications. Please refrain from interrupting.
Just putting it out real quick,
as that will count,
and then we can get to this
time.
horrible shit
And we
show.
remind our audience here in the Reich Center to Otterbein to be respectful so the candidates can take questions and each other. All right, let's begin. Since the last debate, House Democrats have officially launched an impeachment inquiry against President Trump, which all the candidates on this stage support. Senator Warren, I want to start with you. You have said that there's already enough evidence for President Trump to be impeached and removed from office. But the question is, with the election only 1 year
Okay, can you guys hear this shit all right?
Who determine the president's fate?
Because sometimes there are issues that are bigger than
Also,
politics.
Jeffrey Jefferson
That's the
subbed.
case
Hell
with this
yeah.
impeachment inquiry. When I made the decision to run
For
president,
17
I
months,
certainly
holy
didn't
fuck.
think it was going to be about impeachment. But when the Mueller report came out, I read it, all 442 pages. And when I got to the end, I realized that Mueller had shown.
All right, what's the rule about talking over the candidates? Who am I allowed to talk over?
Justice and done it repeatedly. And so at that moment, I called for opening an impeachment inquiry. Now, that didn't
Everyone?
happen, and look what
All right,
happened
cool.
as a result. Donald Trump broke the law again.
Hey, Connor,
and
what's
so
up, Sibeurian?
again this fall. You know, we
Can
took
talk
a
over Booker.
constitutional
Okay.
oath, and that is that no one is above the law, and that includes the President of the United States. Impeachment.
Because I don't
is the
even
way
hate Warren that much,
establish
but
that
this, like,
man
impeachment
will
talk,
not
I don't give a
be
rat's
permitted
fucking
to break
ass
the
about it.
law over and over without consequences. This is about Donald Trump, but understand, it's about the next president and the next president and the next president and the future
Yeah,
of
this
this
shit is
country.
like-
The impeachment must go forward.
I hope the whole debate isn't about this.
Senator Sanders, do Democrats have any choice but to impeach President Trump? Please
No, they don't. In my judgment, Trump is the most corrupt president in the history of this country. It's not just that he obstructed justice with the Mueller report.
Can you full screen it?
I
Sure.
think that the House will find him guilty of
I can't.
worthy of impeachment because of the emolument.
Also, the
This is
stream
the
could get
president who is enriching
destroyed
himself
if I full screen it,
while
I think.
using the Oval Office to do that, and that is
Yeah, imagine that.
And I think
CNN has
the
a
recent Ukrainian incident. The
hot
idea that
copyright.
we have a president of the United States who is prepared to hold back national security money to one of our allies in order to get dirt on a presidential candidate is beyond comprehension.
It is a shame, because now they got Bernie talking about this too.
Speedy and expeditious impeachment process, but
And I'm not
Mitch
really,
McConnell
you know,
has got to do the right thing and allow
this
a
impeachment
free
shit is just like a peacock
President
dance.
Biden, during the Clinton impeachment proceedings, you said, and I quote, "The American people don't think that they made a
Anto
mistake
Beats
by electing
2002
Clinton
just
and
subbed with
Congress.
Twitch Prime.
Better be
Hell
very
yeah.
careful before we upset their decisions with the country
Is it
now
windy where I'm at?
have
No,
to
I have the
be
AC
careful
on.
enough in pursuing the impeachment of
I
President
can turn down my
Yeah,
gain
I've
if it's
said from
super
the
loud.
beginning that if in fact Trump continued to stonewall, but the Congress is entitled to know about his background, what he did, all the accusations in the Mueller report, if they did that, they would have no choice but to begin
Is it Wendy's where you're at?
more power to seek more information. This president, and I agree with Bernie, Senator Sanders, is the most corrupt president in modern history, and I think all of our history.
God, this horror
And the fact
sucks
is that
so
this
bad.
President of the United States has gone so far as to say, since this latest event.
It's
that he,
such
in
a
fact,
waste.
will not cooperate in any way at
Where's the
all.
volume
Will not
switch?
arrest any witnesses, will not provide
Perfect.
information, will not do
Just
anything
do
but
that.
They have no choice but to do it.
Senator Harris, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has said that members of Congress have to be, in her words, fair to the president and give him a chance to exonerate
Is this the whole thing is going to be about impeachment?
On everything you've seen, you would vote to remove him from office. Is that being fair to the president?
Well, it's just being observant because he has committed crimes in plain sight. I mean, it's shocking, but he told us who.
Khonjin, who has the drip out of all of them?
Listen to somebody when they tell you who they are.
I actually don't really know what that
During
means.
election, Donald Trump
What does
told us he
that
could
What does
shoot
that mean?
somebody
Who
if
has the
that
drip?
would
Does
get
that mean like
And he has
who's the guy?
consistently
Who's
said
number
he's
one?
been
Who are we
selling
rooting
out the
for?
American people. He's been selling out working people. He's been selling out our values. He's been selling out national security. And on this issue with Ukraine,
Who looks the
he's
best?
selling out our democracy. Our
Who
framers
looks the
imagined
nicest?
this moment, a moment where we would have a corrupt president.
I don't know.
And
I've
our
seen
framers
3 of them.
rightly
If you're
designed
talking
our
about
system of democracy to
their
say there would be checks
their
and
get-ups,
balances. This is one of those moments.
I'm just gonna by default say Andrew Yang.
But the reality of it is that I don't really think this impeachment process is going to take very long. Because as a former prosecutor, I know a confession when I see it. And he did it in plain sight.
Not really a
He's given
debate
us
if
the
they all
evidence,
agree
he tried
Trump
to cover it
sucks.
up,
It's
but
not
he
even
didn't
that.
serve
It's,
it.
you know,
And there's been
I hate Trump as much as the next guy, but this impeachment, it doesn't mean anything. It's kind of upsetting because here, I'm just going to cut her out here because she's not going to say anything insightful. Do you think that, oh yeah, do you think Cory Booker's going to say something insightful about impeachment? Do you think he's going to blow everyone's mind and come out there and go, yeah, I'm glad you asked me about impeachment. Bush did 9/11. I just gotta say it, guys. I'm sorry. I know this is the wrong time, but I'm putting it out there. Like, it's not gonna happen. He's gonna say that, like, it's been a long time coming, and we need to do the right thing. And watch. I'll turn it up.
It is honorable that brings our country together, doesn't rip us apart.
Yep.
Anybody who has criticisms about a process that is making all the
Brings our country together. It's impeachment. Yeah. Okay. So Corey's not going to say anything. He will not say anything that is So Corey, what do you think about impeachment? I don't know. Hey, did you see the new Steven Universe movie? It sucked. He's not going to say that. Klobuchar. No, she'll say something interesting. Watch this.
The economy could backfire on Democrats.
Just kidding. She won't.
Things at once. That's our job.
She won't. She absolutely won't.
Duty to pursue this impeachment, but we also can stand up for America because this president has not been putting America in front of his
This
own
president
personal
is
interests.
bad, and we should
He's
impeach
not
him.
been-
And thank you for that. So there you go. For the next 15 minutes, they're gonna say, you know, Trump's bad and we should impeach him. And I will bet you anything. I really will bet you anything that you're not gonna see anything in the news that's like, during an impeachment question, Tom Steyer, a random fucking billionaire who no one knew before he bought his way onto this fucking debate stage, just drop some, whatever. Khonjin, who do you think is least bad? I'm going to actually change that. I'm going to say there's 2 good people. Actually 3. Well, I'll say 2.5. So, for me right now, I'll tell you all my biases up front. Bernie's my biggest bias. Scrith? Is it Sycrith the Squid? Subscribe with Twitch Prime. Thank you for the sub. Yeah, I'll give you all my biases. Number 1 is Bernie Sanders. Bernie's the fucking man. I don't give a rat's ass. I'm in his camp. Number 2 for me is Andrew Yang. Yang's a good boy. Every time he talks, I love him a little more. Although he had some weird views on porn. It's very strange indeed. But otherwise, I like Yang. I do. And Tulsi Gabbard made it back onto this debate, even though she was asked from the other one. So, we'll see. What did he say about porn? He said that there'd have to be some, like, regulations in place to make sure kids aren't watching it, which is, like, I don't know, that's a weird, like, on paper it's fine, but I really don't want the government getting involved with, like, making sure kids don't. It's, like, such an unimportant issue, is how I feel about it. But anyway. Wait, didn't she boycott it? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. Alright, I'll turn this up a bit.
The president has left the Congress with no choice.
Oh, this is still impeachment. Alright, is it okay with you guys that we just skip all the impeachment questions? I just don't care. Like, I really don't. Does that, like, do any of you care? You do mind? Astros Radio? Do you mind? Alright, as long as no one gives a fuck, then I'm gonna keep the volume down for these, because this shit is just... God. Yeah, this is not important at all. Especially Pete Buttigieg, who... he has such a fucker's way of answering every question. I bet you it's like, I believe that impeachment is dangerous for the Democratic Party, but I also believe that the president needs to be held accountable. So we'll just let the pieces fall and leave it as it lay, or whatever. It's gonna be some bullshit like that. Oh, Tulsi, never mind. I'm turning this shit up.
If impeachment is driven by these hyper-partisan interests, it will only further divide an already terribly divided country. Unfortunately, this is what we've already seen play out as calls for impeachment really began shortly after Trump won his election. And as unhappy as that may make us as Democrats, he won that election in 2016. Serious issues that have been raised around this phone call that he had with the president of Ukraine and many other things that transpired around that are what caused me to support the inquiry in the House. And I think that it should continue to play its course out, to gather all the information, provide that to the American people, recognizing that that is the only way forward. If the House votes to impeach, the Senate does not vote to remove Donald Trump, he walks out and he feels exonerated, further deepening the divides in this country that we cannot afford.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Mr. Steyer, you've been calling for impeachment for 2 years.
Oh, and here it is. Tom Steyer.
This is my first time on this stage, so I just want to start.
Guys, it's my first time on the stage, but not my first time having $1 billion. Here's a quick question for the Twitch chat. Do any of you know who this guy is? Any of you? Is there one person in here who knows who the fuck Tom Steyer is?
Because I knew there was something desperately wrong at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. That we did have the most corrupt president in the country.
You know what? I'll take that suggestion, you know? What would... I want to dub him what he's saying, but I don't know him. I don't know what he would say. Like, I just have a lot of fucking money. If I win, I'll have money. I promise I'll bring money back to politics. That's what we've been waiting for. Oh, he's done talking. Oh no. Okay.
I support impeachment, but we shouldn't have any illusions that impeaching Donald Trump will, one, be successful, or two, erase the problems that got him elected in 2016. We're standing in the great state of Ohio, the ultimate purple state, the ultimate bellwether state. Why did Donald Trump win your state by 8 points? Because we got rid of 300,000 manufacturing jobs in your towns, and we're not stopping there. How many of you have noticed stores closing?
Get that mic, Yang.
In Ohio? Raise your hands.
Fuck up that mic.
It's not just you. Amazon alone is closing 30% of America's stores and malls, soaking up $20 billion in business while paying zero in taxes. These are the problems that got Donald Trump elected, the fourth industrial revolution. And that is going to accelerate and grow more serious regardless of who is in the Oval Office. The fact is, Donald Trump, when we're talking about him, we are losing. We need to present a new vision, and that even includes talking about impeaching Donald Trump.
Mr. Congressman O'Rourke, on impeachment, please respond.
You know, I think about everyone...
I think about impeaching the president all the time, and I've talked to my fellow Americans about this, and they have told me on no uncertain terms that the time for change is now. And if we come together under the banner of impeaching Donald Trump, we will be able to overcome, as our country has always been able to before, even if it meant off of the backs of the hardest working Americans among us. And allow me to take this time to remind you that yes, I can skateboard, and I am the only candidate on stage that can skateboard through a half pipe. I will bet the election and my election chances that if I were to skate to the White House on one of what are those boards called that are really small? Like they're purposely made really small. Anyway, all right, enough about your fucking board. Fuck you. We're gonna move on to the next guy. Joe Biden. If you win the presidency, what do you plan to change? What will be your first act in office? Should you uphold the mantle of this very serious institution? What will you do to gain the people's love? Just answer the question after I stop asking it. It's a long time to ask it. It's very important. It's a very, very long way of saying this. The first thing I will do is beat Donald Trump. I think that's what the Americans want. The next thing I will do is we'll bring Obamacare back, but make it not suck. We'll make better stuff, and we'll get the health insurance people to help us with that. They were such a help last time, you know. Oh wait, is this about Ukraine? Never mind. I need to hear this shit.
George Washington worried on the first time he spoke after being elected president that what we had to worry about is foreign interference in our elections. It was the greatest threat to America. This president on three occasions, has invited foreign governments and heads of government to get engaged in trying to alter our elections.
Biden says no family member will be involved.
Rudy Giuliani, the president, and his thugs have already proven that they, in fact, are flat.
So, a fun thing you'll notice is the question asked will have nothing to do with the answer he's giving. We'll turn the volume back up here.
Beat him like a drum.
Mr. Hold on, sorry. Follow up. Mr. Vice President, as you said, your son Hunter admitted that he made a mistake and
beat him like a drum.
That board in Ukraine. Did you make a mistake by letting him? You were the point person on Ukraine at the time. If you can answer.
Look, my son's statement speaks for itself. I did my job. I never discussed a single thing with my son about anything having to do with Ukraine. No one has indicated I have. We've always kept everything separate. Even when my son was the Attorney General of the state of Delaware, we never discussed anything. So there'd be no potential conflict. My son made a judgment. I'm proud of the judgment he made.
Don't talk to me or my son ever again.
And let's focus on this. The fact of the matter is that this is about Trump's corruption. That's what we should be focusing on.
Senator Sanders, your response.
Let me make a point. I think that it is absolutely imperative to go forward with impeachment. I hope that he is impeached. But I think what would be a disaster if the American people believe that all we were doing is taking on Trump. And we're forgetting that 87 million Americans are uninsured or underinsured. We're forgetting about the existential threat of climate change. We are forgetting about the fact that half of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. So what we have got to do is end this corruption, set a precedent for future history that says presidents like this cannot behave this way. But we cannot and must not turn our backs on the pain of the working class of this country.
Senator Sanders, thank you. Mark?
We want to move now to the economy. Senator Warren, you've proposed some sweeping plans, free public college. Thank you. We're going to Senator Warren.
To move on.
Senator Warren, we've proposed.
It is wrong.
Proposing sweeping plans.
They're going to strike.
College, free universal child care, eliminating most Americans' college debt. And you've said how you're going to pay for those plans, but you have not specified how you're going to pay for the most expensive plan, Medicare. Will you raise taxes on the middle class to pay for it, yes or no?
So
Wait a minute! Don't answer that question yet! We can't move on! You didn't get to hear my answer about that, Bernie's answer.
families, costs will go down. The way I see this is
Okay, I'm back.
I have been out all around this country. I've done 140 town halls now, been to 27 states and Puerto Rico. Should have done 70,000 selfies,
Will
which
Warren
must be the
raise
new measure of
taxes?
democracy. And this gives people a chance to come up and talk to me directly. So I've talked with the whose daughter's been diagnosed with cancer. I have talked to the young woman whose mother has just been diagnosed with diabetes. I've talked to the young man who has
That was
MS.
Krimpf,
And
bro.
here's the thing about all of them, they all had great health insurance right at the beginning. But then they found out when they really needed it, when the costs went up, that the insurance
Gotta
company
go, but I
pulled
really
the
enjoyed the
rug
stream,
out from
Khonjin.
underneath
Keep it
them,
up.
and
Alright,
they
I
were
will.
left with nothing.
Bye.
Look, the way I see this, it is hard enough to get a diagnosis that your child has cancer. To think about the changes in your family if your mom's got diabetes, or what it
She
means
tried
for
making
your
a
life
funny
going
joke
forward
about her
if
selfies
you've
and no
been
one laughed.
diagnosed with
Oh no.
MS. But what you shouldn't have to worry about is how you're going to pay for your health care after that.
Senator Warren, to be clear, Senator Sanders acknowledges he's going to raise taxes on the middle class to pay for Medicare for all. You've endorsed his plan.
This is such
Should you
bullshit
acknowledge
framing.
it too?
They want her
The
to,
way I see this, it is about
All right.
what kinds of costs
we
middle-class
go.
families are going to face. So let me be clear on this.
watch this. They have been unrelenting with this
They will
bullshit.
go up for big corporations.
Data
and for
Jin or
middle-class
Data
families.
Gim?
They
Who are you
will go
rooting
down.
for?
I will not
Bernie and
sign
Yang.
A bill into law that does not lower costs for
And Tulsi,
middle-class
sorta.
families.
Mayor Buttigieg, you say Senator Warren has been, quote, evasive about how she's going to pay for Medicare for all. What's your response?
Holy
We
shit,
heard
the
it tonight,
title.
A yes or no question that didn't get a yes or no answer. Look, this is why people here in the Midwest are so
Chestnut
frustrated.
subbed for 14 months.
Your signature
Hell the
has to
fuck
have a
yes.
plan for
Tier
everything
1.
Except this. No plan has been laid out to explain.
Never thought I'd be watching a debate with Khonjin the night after I tell him the Stardew Valley story. Well, it's a crazy world, isn't it?
And the thing is, we really can deliver health care for every American.
I have a
And
better
move
thing we can
forward
visit,
with the boldest,
spacejam.com.
biggest transformation since the inception of Medicare itself. But the way to do it
Fuck
without
socialism, all caps.
and without having to avoid a yes or no question is Medicare.
Fuck
for
you,
all.
all
It's a
caps.
version of Medicare. We let you access it if you want to, and if you prefer to stay on your private plan, you can do that too. That is what most Americans want. Medicare for all who want it, trusting you to make
Pete
the right
Buttigieg is a
decision
fucking
for your
snake.
healthcare and for your family, and it can be delivered
Thank you, Mayor.
without an increase
Senator,
on
your
middle-class
response?
taxes.
So let's be clear. Whenever someone hears the term Medicare for all,
Oh, are they fighting?
understand what that really means. It's Medicare for all who can afford it. And that's the
get
problem
'em.
we've got. Medicare for all is the gold standard. It is the way we get health care coverage for every single American, including the family whose child's been diagnosed with cancer, including the person who's just gotten an MS diagnosis.
Shaking his damn head.
That's how we make sure that everyone gets health care. We can pay for this. I've laid out the basic principles. Costs are going to go up for the wealthy. They're going to go up for big corporations. They will not go up for middle-class families, and I will not sign a bill into law that raises their costs, because costs are what people care about. I've been studying this, for the biggest part of my
Thank you,
life.
Senator.
Why people go
Can the
bankrupt.
mayor respond? Sure.
I don't think the American people are wrong when they say that what they want is a choice. And the choice of Medicare for all who want it, which is
Oh my
affordable
God.
for everyone because we make sure that the subsidies are in place, allows you to get that health care. It's just better than Medicare for all, whether you want it or not. And I don't understand why you believe the only way to deliver affordable coverage to everybody is to obliterate private plans, kicking 150 million Americans off of their insurance in 4 short years when we could achieve that same big, bold goal. And once again, we gotta be president. We're competing to be president for the day after Trump. Our country will be horrifyingly polarized, even more than now. After everything we've been through, after everything we are about to go through, this country
He
will
is
be
such a
even more
fucking
divided.
snake.
Why unnecessarily divide this country over healthcare when there's a better way to
Thank
deliver
you, Mayor.
coverage for all?
Senator Sanders.
Well, as somebody who wrote the damn bill, as I said,
Bernie,
Let's be clear.
I love you, but you gotta stop saying
Under
that.
the Medicare for All bill that I wrote, premiums are gone. Co-payments are gone. Deductibles are gone. All out-of-pocket expenses are gone. We're going to do better than the Canadians do, and that is what they have managed to do. At the end of the day, the overwhelming majority of people will save money on their health care bills. But I do think it is appropriate to acknowledge that taxes will go up. They're going to go up significantly for the wealthy. And for virtually everybody, the tax increase they pay will be substantially less than what they were paying for premiums and out-of-pocket expenses.
Well, Senator Warren, will you acknowledge what the senator just said about taxes going up?
Jesus Christ!
On this and what I have committed to.
Fucking imbeciles. So, watch this. They're going to hound her to just say the words, taxes will go up, so that they can get a soundbite. No matter how obvious it is that she agrees, they're going to keep asking. They're going to say, so Elizabeth, will you just fucking say it already? The mic is on, bitch. Just say it. Say the taxes will go up. But it seems like she's not biting, which I respect. But you know, it's so fucking stupid.
Going to pay for this, and that taxes are going to go up. And I'm sorry, Elizabeth, but you have not said that. And I think we owe it to the American people to tell them where we're going to send the invoice. I believe the best and boldest idea here is to not trash Obamacare, but to do exactly what Barack Obama wanted to do from the
Did she say it? Did she say it while I was yelling over her?
The cost of the premium and expand the number of people covered and take on the pharmaceutical companies. That is what we should be doing instead of taking 149 million people off their insurance.
Who is that? Someone from the audience.
You are making Republican talking points right now in this room by coming up with a plan that's going to do it. I think there is a better way.
What a fucking idiot. She's like, if Joe Biden wasn't on that stage, she'd be the most Republican person on that stage.
Most of my time in Washington, I spent most of my time studying one basic question, and that is why hardworking people go broke. And one of the principal reasons for that is the cost of health care. And back when I was studying it,
that is a good question. Why is she still there? Have you ever, listen, I know you probably have some unsavory friends. Maybe you got some Trump friends. You might even have some Biden friends. Does anyone have any friends that are fans of Amy Klobuchar? Do you know anyone who's like, oh man, it's Klobuchar bust. She's got to be the president. No one wants her in this fucking race. But somehow she's still here.
And a part of that is we
Thank you, Senator.
To stop Americans from going bankrupt over health care.
Senator Klobuchar, do you want to respond?
Yes, I do.
Oh,
I
yeah, of course you do.
Work.
All right.
But again, the difference between a plan and a pipe dream.
Also, they're wearing the same shit. I just noticed that. What is going on here?
Take on the pharmaceutical companies and bring down the prices. But what really bothers me about this discussion, which we've had so many times, is that we don't talk about the things that I'm hearing about from regular Americans. That is long-term care.
She's a plant. She lives there.
It is silver tsunami. The aging, and then someone told me that was too negative, so I call it the silver surge. The aging of the population.
And then they said that was too stupid, so I called it the Silver Surfer. But then they said that's already a movie, so then I called it the Silver Cup. But then they said they give those away at competitions, and so I don't know. They really had to talk to the branding managers about this. I like how she admits she was too much of a fucking wimp to just stick to her guns and call it the Silver Tsunami.
About the difficulty of enacting their plans.
First of all, the plan we're hearing discussed is the Biden plan, the one I put forward. Build on Obamacare, add a public option. We can go into that. I can talk about that if you like. But here's the deal.
Here comes the wag. Wag 'em.
I think it's awfully important to be straightforward with it.
I called it the Silver Redacted.
$30 trillion over 10 years. That is more on a yearly basis than the entire federal budget. And we talk about how we're going to pay for it. The study recently came out showing that, in fact,
When Bernie wags his finger, he's like capturing lightning particles out of the air to like charge up his answer. We need more Yang time. Oh, spoiler alert, you're not gonna get it. Yang's gonna get 2 minutes while the rest of them get a fucking 3 hours.
4% income tax. If you make it for firemen and a school teacher, are making $100,000 a year, their taxes are going to go up about 10 grand. That is more than they will possibly save on this health care plan. We have a plan put forward that will work.
Senator Sanders, do you want to respond?
I get a little bit tired, I must say, of people defending a system which is dysfunctional, which is cruel. 87 million uninsured, 30,000 people dying every single year, 500,000 people going bankrupt. For what reason? They came down with cancer. I will tell you what the issue is here. The issue is whether the Democratic Party has the guts to stand up to the healthcare industry, which made $100 billion in profit.
Get his
whether
ass.
we have the guts to stand up to the corrupt, price-fixing pharmaceutical industry, which is charging us the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. And if we don't have the guts to do that, if all we can do is take their money, we should be ashamed of ourselves.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Harris,
Hell
your
yeah.
response?
This is the sixth debate we have had in this presidential cycle, and not nearly one word with all of these discussions about health care on women's access to reproductive health care, which is under full-on attack in America today.
Oh, finally someone said it.
There are states that have passed laws that will virtually prevent women from having access to reproductive health care. And it is not an exaggeration to say
God.
women will die. Poor women, women of color will die because these Republican
Hang on! No one has said anything in this healthcare debate about black people's health. So I'm just gonna say it. I'm just gonna say what we're all thinking. Okay?
Thank you, woke guy in the audience, for that take on this. I think that has been the problem with healthcare. Is that
Turn down to jobs. According to a recent study, about a quarter of American jobs could be lost to automation in just the next 10 years. Ohio is one of the states likely to be hardest hit. Senator Sanders, you say your federal jobs guarantee is part of the answer to the threat from automation. But tens of millions of Americans could end up losing their jobs. Are you promising that you will have a job for every single
should
one?
we
of those
eliminate
Americans?
Ohio?
Right, we will. And I'll tell you why. If you look at what goes on in America today, we have an infrastructure which is collapsing. We can put 15 million people to work rebuilding our roads, our bridges, our water systems, our wastewater plants, airports, etc. Furthermore, and I hope we will discuss it at length tonight, this planet faces the greatest threat in its history from climate change. And the Green New Deal that I have advocated will create up to 20 million jobs as we move away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and
Is that
sustainable
one town
energy.
still screwed
We need
over
workers
in
to do
Flint?
childcare. We need workers,
Yeah.
great teachers to come in to school systems which don't have the teachers that we need right now. We need more doctors. We need more dentists. We need more carpenters. We need more sheet metal workers. And when we talk about making public colleges and universities tuition free and canceling student debt, we're going to give those people the opportunity to get those good jobs.
Senator Sanders, thank you. Mr. Yang, your main solution to job loss from automation is a universal basic income. Why is giving people $1,000 a month better than Sanders' plan to guaranteeing them a job?
I am for the spirit of a federal jobs guarantee, but you have to look at how it would actually materialize in practice.
Oh,
what
goodness.
are the jobs? Who manages you? What if you
Yang
don't
and
like your
Bernie are
job?
gonna
What if you're
clash.
not good at your job? The fact is, most Americans do not want to work for the federal government. And saying that that is the vision of the economy of the 21st century, to me, is not a vision that most Americans would embrace. Also, Senator Sanders' description of a federal jobs guarantee does not take into account the work of people like my wife, who's at home with our 2 boys, one of whom is autistic. We have a freedom dividend of $1,000 a month. It actually recognizes the work that is happening in our families and our communities. It helps all Americans transition. Because the fact is, and you know this in Ohio, If you rely upon the federal government to target its resources,
Is
you
Yang's
wind up
first
with
clash
failing
gonna be
training
with
programs
Bernie?
in jobs that no one wants.
'Cause if so, that's
When we put
not
money
what I
in
was
our
expecting
hands,
at all,
we can
and I
control
don't
our
think it's
economy.
good.
From our people, our families, and our communities up, it will enable us to do the kind of work that we want to do. This is the sort of positive vision in response to the fourth industrial revolution that we have to embrace as a party.
Senator Booker, a federal jobs guarantee or $1,000 a month?
Oh, but there was no clash.
There, please respond.
Well, first of all, I'm happy to get in finally, and I just want to say, as a great
No, it's good? Why do you think it's good?
I am having deja vu all over again. I'm having deja vu all over again, first of all, because I saw this play in 2016's election. We are literally using Donald Trump's
split
lies.
screen
The
bait.
second issue we cover on this stage is elevating a lie and attacking a statesman. That was so offensive. He should not have to defend ourselves, and the only person sitting at home that was enjoying that was Donald Trump, seeing that we're distracting
They kept
from
a
his
debate from happening.
malfeasance and selling out of his office. And I'm having deja vu all over again.
I guess that's fair.
All over again because we have another healthcare debate, and we're not talking about the clear and existential threat in America that we're in a state that has had 2 Planned Parenthoods close. We are seeing all over this country women's reproductive rights under
Not gonna
attack.
lie, I kind of want some action. Let Bernie throw hands with Biden. Now that I'd be for.
Up this cause and this fight, and then it is not just
Oh, Tom Steyer with the finger wave. He has something to contribute to this conversation, no doubt.
and people deserve to control their own body.
Senator, thank you. We are going to get to that issue later on tonight. Senator Warren, you wrote that blaming job loss on automation is, quote, a good story, except it's not really true. So should workers here in Ohio not be worried about losing their jobs to automation?
So the data show that we've had a lot of problems with losing jobs, but the principal reason has been bad trade policy.
I completely forgot about Tom already. Yep, he's pretty forgettable.
Giant multinational corporations who've been calling the shots on trade. Giant multinational corporations that have no loyalty to America. They have no loyalty to American workers. They have no loyalty to American consumers. They have no loyalty to American communities. They are loyal only to their own bottom line. I have a plan to fix that, and it's accountable capitalism. It says you want to have...
So the thing is, if Yang clashes with anyone, it will be his first clash. It will be his first interaction. Everything he's ever said has been met with no rebuttal or response. So it's interesting that the discussion is here.
In the boardroom saying, no, do you know what that does to our company? Do you know what that does to our community, to what it does to our workers? We also need to make it easier to join a union and give unions more power.
Yes, Yang has a clean slate as far as exchanges go, which is good or bad depending on how, who you ask.
Good story, except it's not really true.
Well, I think what folks have said is that is only part of the issue, right? I believe that we need to address communities that are being impacted.
Who is
by
Bird
automation.
Girl voting for? Who the hell is Bird Girl?
And to see how that would work, but I think we need to focus on making sure that we spark job opportunity for people across this country. As I mentioned earlier, here in Ohio, in the latest job data, Ohio is losing jobs under Donald Trump. He has broken his promises to Ohio and the industrial Midwest.
I super don't give a shit about what Julian Castro's saying.
I would invest in a Green New Deal to unleash millions of new jobs and a clean energy economy.
Your ex who scratched your brother? Who is she voting for? If I had to guess, probably, I don't know, fucking Warren. No, she'd vote for fucking Kamala because she's black and a woman. And, for no other reason.
Invest in things like universal child care so that people can afford child care instead of having to pay 20% of their income for it.
Senator Warren, I've been talking to Americans around the country
Oh, shit.
They're smart. They see what's happening around them. Their mainstream stores are closing. They see a self-serve kiosk in every McDonald's, every grocery store, every CVS. Driving a truck is the most common job in 29 states, including this one. 3.5 million truck drivers
Holy
in this
fuck,
country,
he actually
and
did
my
it.
friends in California are piloting self-driving trucks. What is that going to mean for the 3.5 million truckers or the 7 million Americans who work in truck stops, hotels, and diners that rely upon the truckers getting out and having a meal? Saying this is a rules problem is ignoring the reality that Americans see around us every single day.
Senator Warren?
Get him.
So,
He actually did it.
understand that what we're all looking for is how we strengthen America's middle class. And actually, I think the thing closest to the universal basic income is Social Security. It's one of the reasons that I put forward a plan to extend
This is the best outcome. Clashing with Warren.
and add $200 to the payment of every person who receives Social Security right now and every person who receives disability insurance right now. That $200 a month will lift nearly 5 million families out of poverty, and it will sure loosen up the budget for a whole lot more. It also has a provision for your wife, for those who stay home to do caregiving for children or for seniors, and creates an opportunity for them to get credit on their Social Security. So after a lifetime of hard work, people are entitled to retire with dignity.
Thank you, Senator
I
Warren.
see this as an important question about I want to understand the data on this.
Senator,
and
thank
I
you
want to
very
make sure
much.
We're responding to make this work.
Your time is up. I want to give Congresswoman Gabbard a chance to respond.
Thank
Interesting.
You. Really what this is
Gabbard.
about is getting to the heart of the fear that is well-founded. As people look to this automation revolution, they look to uncertainty. They don't know how this is going to affect their jobs and their everyday lives. And I agree with my friend Andrew Yang. I think universal basic income is a good idea to help provide that
Yeah, buddy.
so people can have the freedom to make the kinds of choices that they want to see. This has to do with bad trade deals that we've seen in the past that have also driven fear towards people losing the way that they provide for their families. Really what we need to do is look at how we can best serve the interests of the American people. I do not believe a federal jobs guarantee is the way to do that. The value that someone feels in themselves and their own lives is not defined by the job that they have, but is intrinsic to who we all are.
Who is she? She is a candidate running on anti-interventionist war.
One of the industries
And on that alone, I like her.
from a changing economy is the auto industry. General Motors used to be the largest employer in Ohio. Now it's 72nd. Today, thousands of GM workers here in Ohio and across the country are on strike. All of you on the stage have voiced support for these workers. Senator Booker, one of the latest impasses in negotiations
thank God.
involves
Senator
bringing
Booker
jobs
is here.
back from Mexico. As president, how would you convince GM to return production to the United States?
Well, first of all, the one point I want
If
to
you were
make
asking
about
questions
the
at the
UBI
debate,
conversation, and I hope,
what would you ask?
That my friend Andrew Yang will come out for this. Doing more for
Hang on,
workers,
let me see this.
Then UBI would actually be just raising
Anything
the
involving
wage to
Yang, I gotta
$15
see.
an hour. It would put more money in people's pockets than giving them $1,000 a month. We have to start putting the dignity back in work. And number one, you start having trade deals. Not like this thing that the president's trying to push through Congress right now that gives pharmaceutical companies and other corporations benefits and doesn't put workers at the center of every trade deal. We must make sure we are not giving corporate tax incentives for people to move jobs out of our country, but start to put the worker at the center of that and make sure that they have the resources to succeed. It's more than that.
I only respect
Still
Booker
with these
because he's
workers,
repping
because we're seeing
NJ.
this
Well, I'm
trend
repping
all over
NJ
our
and
country.
fuck Cory
Still with
Booker.
unions, because right now unions in America are under attack. As union membership has gone down, we have seen a stratification of wealth and income in this country. So the other thing that I'll do as President of the United States is begin to fight again to see union strength in this country spread, to make sure we have sectoral bargaining so that unions from the auto workers all the way to fast food workers can ensure that we improve workers' conditions and make sure that every American has a
If Yang comes back, I'm gonna go back to paying attention to this shit.
Congressman O'Rourke, same question for you. How would you convince GM to bring production back to the United States from Mexico?
Convincing GM is one of the great problems of our time, and I think that if we come together as a people, we will be able to overcome GM Motors. I will personally use all of the AK-47s that I confiscate from gun owners and go into General Motors and shoot up their premises if they do not give in to my demands. I think they will open the table for negotiation if I threaten them with violence. Sometimes violence is the answer, but when it comes to getting General Motors back to making cars, we could expand our opportunities. Perhaps we could create cars that have AK-47s built into the rear view mirrors that we put into the cars after we confiscate them from the gun owners. This is one of my many policies that you can look at on my website. Whatever, I'm done with this shit. Oh, and I guess they are too.
At an alarming rate. The top 1% now own more of this nation's wealth than the bottom 90% combined. Senator Sanders, when you introduced your wealth tax, which would tax the assets of the wealthiest Americans, you said, quoting you, Senator, billionaires should not exist. Is the goal of your plan to tax billionaires out of existence?
When you have 500,000 Americans sleeping out on the street today, when you have 87 million people uninsured or underinsured, when you got hundreds of thousands of kids who cannot afford to go to college and millions struggling with the oppressive burden of student debt, and then you also have 3 people owning more wealth than the bottom half of American society, that is a moral and economic outrage. And the truth is, we cannot afford to continue this level of income and wealth inequality, and we cannot afford a billionaire class whose greed and corruption has been at war with the working families of this country for 45 years. So if you're asking me, do I think we should demand that the wealthy start paying the wealthiest, top 0.1%, start paying their fair share of taxes, so we can create a nation and a government that works for all of us? Yes, that's exactly what I believe.
Thank you, Senator.
Yes, I'm glad he said it. I was afraid he was going to dance around it.
Billionaire on this stage.
Well, first of all, let me say this. Senator Sanders is right. There have been 40 years where corporations have bought this government, and those 40 years have meant a 40-year attack on the rights of working people and specifically on organized labor. And the results are as shameful as Senator Sanders says, both in terms of assets and in terms of income. It's absolutely wrong. It's absolutely undemocratic and unfair. I was one of the first people on this stage to propose a wealth tax. I would undo every Republican tax cut for rich people and major corporations. But there's something else going on here that is absolutely shameful.
What is it,
and
Tom?
that's the way the money gets split up in terms of earnings. As a result of taking away the rights of working people and organized labor, people haven't had a raise. 90% of Americans have not had a raise for 40 years. If you took the minimum wage from 1980 and just adjusted it for inflation, you get $11. It's $7.25.
He looks like Bill Nye's brother.
The productivity gains of American workers, it'd be over $20. There's something wrong here, and that is that the corporations have bought our government. Our government has failed.
I kind of think he is Bill Nye.
Because we're not going to get any of the policies that everybody on this stage wants. Health care, education, Green New Deal, or a living wage, unless we break the power of these corporations.
Thank you, Mr. Steyer. Vice President Biden, you have warned
That's
against
just Bill Nye in a disguise.
Do you believe that Senator Sanders and Senator Warren's wealth tax plans do that?
No.
Bill Nye, the money
What I talk
guy.
about is how you get things done. And the way to get things done is take a look at the tax code right now. The idea, we have to start rewarding work, not just wealth. I would eliminate...
It wasn't a bad answer. It's just hard to trust someone who literally bought his way onto the debate stage.
The highest rate of 39.5%. I would double it. Because guess what? Why in God's name should someone who's clipping coupons in the stock market in fact, pay a lower tax rate than someone who, in fact, is, like I said, a school teacher and a firefighter? It's ridiculous, and they pay a lower tax. Secondly, the idea that we in fact engage in this notion that there are there's $1,640 billion in tax loopholes. You can't justify a minimum $600 billion of that. We can eliminate it all. I could go into detail had I the time. Secondly, thirdly, what we need to do is we need to go out and make it clear to the American people that we are going to raise taxes on the wealthy. We're going to reduce tax burdens on those who are not. And this is one of the reasons why these debates are kind of crazy, because everybody tries to squeeze everything into every answer that is given. The fact is, everybody's right about the fact that the fourth industrial revolution is costing jobs. It is. The fact is also corporate greed. If they're going back and not investing in their employees, they're reinvesting and buying back their stock.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Senator Warren, your response.
So I think this is about our values as a country. Show me your budget, show me your tax plans, and we'll know what your values are. And right now in America, the top 0.1% have so much wealth. Understand this, that if we put a 2-cent tax on their 50 millionth and first dollar, and on every dollar after that, we would have enough money to provide universal child care for every baby in this country aged 0 to 5.
Sorry, I'd like to interrupt this answer to let you know that no one has brought up reparations in this answer. Just thought I'd let you know that you're a fucking asshole.
Put $50 billion into historically black colleges and universities.
Thank you, Senator Warren.
No, let me finish, please. And cancel student loan debt for 95% of the people who have it. My question is not why do Bernie and I support a wealth tax, it's why does everyone else on this stage think it is more important to protect billionaires than it is to invest in an entire generation of Americans?
Thank you, Senator Warren. Mayor Buttigieg. Mayor Buttigieg.
Wealth tax. I'm all for just about everything that was just mentioned in these answers. Let me tell you, though, how this looks from the industrial Midwest where I live. Washington politicians, congressmen and senators, saying all the right things, offering the most elegant policy prescriptions, and nothing changes. I didn't even realize it was unusual to have empty factories that I would see out the windows of my dad's Chevy Cavalier when he drove me to school. I didn't
That's
know
right, my dad owned a Chevy Cavalier.
Until I went away to college. Now I drive my own Chevy. It's a Chevy Cruze. Used to be built right in Lordstown, which is now one more symbol of the broken promises that this president has made to workers. But why did workers take a chance on this president in the first place? It's because it felt like nobody was willing to actually do anything. And while he's unquestionably made it dramatically worse, this is time to realize that we're paying attention to the wrong things. We're paying attention to who sounded better on a debate stage or
Senator
a committee
Klobuchar, Senator
versus what's actually
Klobuchar, will a wealth tax work?
It could work. I am open to it, but I want to give a reality check here to Elizabeth, because no one on this stage wants to protect billionaires. Not even the billionaire wants to protect billionaires. We just have different approaches.
Oh my
Your
God.
idea is not the only idea.
What a
And
fucking
when I look at
farce.
this, I think about Donald Trump, the guy that after that tax bill passed, went to Mar-a-Lago, got together with his
My background
cronies,
noise
and
is
said,
louder
"Guess
than the
what? You
debate.
guys all got
Hang
a
on.
black picture." That was the one time in his presidency he told the truth. So we have different ways. I would repeal significant portions of that tax bill that helped the rich, including what he did with the corporate tax rate, including what he did on international taxation. You add it all up.
There, how's
a lot
that?
of money. That one helps pay for that child care, protects that dignity of work, make sure we have decent retirement, and make sure that our kids can go to
Thank
good
you.
schools. It is not one
Thank you,
idea
Senator
that rules
Klobuchar.
here.
Senator Warren, please respond.
So understand, taxing income is not going to get you where you need to be the way taxing wealth does. That the rich are not like you and me. The really, really billionaires are making their money off their accumulated wealth, and it just keeps growing. We need a wealth tax in order to make investments in the next generation. Look, I understand that this is hard, but I think as Democrats, We are going to succeed when we dream big and fight hard, not when we dream small and quit before we get started.
Oh, I would like to respond to that.
Senator Klobuchar.
I got something to say.
I think simply because you have different ideas doesn't mean you're fighting for regular people. I wouldn't even be up on this stage if it wasn't for unions and the dignity of work. If my
And
grandpa didn't
billionaires,
have unions
but, you know.
protecting him in those mines, he wouldn't have survived. If my mom didn't have unions as a teacher,
If my
she
mom
wouldn't have been
didn't
able to
have a
make the
Chevy-
wages she made when my parents got divorced. So just because we have different ideas and get to the same place in terms of beating Donald Trump and taking this on, we are in Ohio. We can win Ohio in the presidency, but only if we unite. If we unite around ideals and don't go fighting against each other.
Mr. Moneyman,
and instead
guys,
take the
Bush.
fight-
Senator Harris, you want to give working families a tax credit of up to $6,000 a year to help close the income gap.
Damn, how the
Is that
mighty
a
have
better
fallen.
solution
I've forgotten
than
all
wealth
about
tax?
Kamala Harris, and I predicted she was going to be like a fucking force of nature.
My mother raised my sister and me. We would often come home from school before she
In our
came
Chevy.
home from work. She'd come home, she'd cook dinner, and at some point we'd go to bed, and she'd sit up at the kitchen table trying to figure out how to make it all work. And when I think about where we are right now in 2020, I do believe justice is on the ballot. It's on the ballot in terms of impeachment. It's on the ballot in terms of economic justice, health justice, and so many other issues. So when I think about this issue, I'm thinking about that dad who tonight is going to be sitting at his kitchen table after
In his
everyone's
Chevy,
gone to sleep,
because he eats in
and
his
sitting
car,
there with his
because he's
cup of
very
tea
poor.
or coffee, trying to figure out how he's going to make it work. And he's probably sitting there deciding that on that minimum wage job that does not pay enough for him to meet the bills at the end of the month, he's going to have to start driving an Uber. And what does that mean? That means that with those two jobs,
And don't
he's
make
gonna
me
miss
tell
his
you what
kids'
brand the
soccer games.
Uber is.
That's the reality for Americans today, which is why, yes, when I get elected and pass this bill, which will give the American family who makes less than $100,000 a year a tax credit of up to $6,000 a year that they can take home at up to $500 a month, that's going to make a real difference in that man's life. And don't tell him that's not a big
Thank
deal
you,
when
Senator.
he's trying to get through the end of the month.
Mr. Yang, your response. Would you oppose a wealth tax?
Ooh.
Senator Warren is 100% right that we're in the midst of the most extreme winner-take-all economy in history. And a wealth tax makes a lot of sense in principle. The problem is that it's been tried in Germany, France, Denmark, Sweden, and all those countries ended up repealing it because it had massive implementation problems and did not generate the revenue that they'd projected. If we can't learn from the failed experiences of other countries, what can we learn from? We should not be looking to other countries' mistakes. Instead, we should look at what Germany, France, Denmark, and Sweden still have, which is a value-added tax. If we give the American people a tiny slice of every Amazon sale, every Google search, every robot truck mile, every Facebook ad, we can generate hundreds of billions of dollars and then put it into our hands because we know best how to use it.
Thank you. Thank you. Congressman O'Rourke, do you think a wealth tax is the best way to address income inequality? Your response?
I think it's part of the solution, but I think we need to be focused on lifting people up.
People up, like my brothers and sisters in uniform, who I love very much. And I think that Elizabeth Warren is very cool because she is a Fuck it, I didn't have anything in time for this. I'll just let him say his stupid piece.
In Las Vegas, Nevada, she's working 4 jobs, raising her child with disabilities, and any American with disabilities knows just how hard it is to make it. And get by
I already
in this
regret
country
letting him
already.
talk again.
Some of those jobs working for some of these corporations, she wants to know how we are going to help her, how we're going to make sure that her child has the care that she needs, that we strengthen protections for those.
Do you guys have any questions you want to ask me while he's, doing his thing? While he's expelling air out of his mouth? Why is everyone all talking about one single random family experience? Because that's what these debates are all about, really. Are you a gamer? Hell the fuck yes, dude. Do you agree with the wealth tax? Oh, I do. Oh, hang on. Let's see.
That anyone thinks I'm punitive. Look, I don't have a beef with billionaires. My problem is you made a fortune in America. You had a great idea. You got out there and worked for it. Good for you. But you built that fortune in America. I guarantee you built it in part using workers all of us help pay to educate. You built it in part getting your goods to market on roads and bridges.
All right,
all of
content.
this
Are you
help pay
planning
for
to
it.
make more
You
content?
built it
Yes,
at
I
least
am.
in part protected by police and firefighters. All of us help pay the salaries for. And all I'm saying is, you make it to the top 1/10
Billionaire
of 1%,
beef.
then pitch in 2 cents so every other kid in America has a chance.
Yeah, I feel like if people knew how much a billion really was, they'd be more on board for taxing it.
Who are working and need help through an expanded earned income tax credit
but
or
that is-
child
Go ahead.
tax credit, which
Go
we
ahead,
will do
Senator.
in my administration.
That is the point. This is universal child care for every baby in this country. Early educational opportunities for every child. Universal pre-K, no matter
Like,
where you live. For every 3
in fairness, because I'll barely keep this up, because whatever, but I, in theory, agree with Yang that, like, just because you raise taxes doesn't mean corporations will pay them, because history sort of proves that to be the case. I still think they should, but,
Secretary Castro, I want to get Secretary Castro in here, please, Congressman. Go ahead, Secretary.
Aaron, and you see that everybody has their own plans, and let me just say that the way that I view this is born out of my own experience. I grew up, like I bet a lot of folks in this room grew up, and folks that are watching on TV. I grew up with my twin brother Joaquin in a single-parent household where my mom was working hard
with
to
a
support us,
Chevy and
also
a
her mom, my
fucking,
grandmother.
okay, fuck
And
this. Any Chevy stories, I'm not gonna sit back and listen to it, I'll just answer these questions. What would you do if you had a chance to make a significant change? Are we talking like I'm the president or I'm the dictator of the world? Joker voice. It's about sending a message. I don't know. That's a big one. What happened to your harebrained scheme to run for president as a joke? I'm still running. Vote for me. This is recon. I'm observing my opponents. Oh, Cory Booker has something to say.
We've got one shot to make Donald Trump a one-term president. And how we talk about each other in this debate actually really matters. I've had the privilege of working with or being friends with everybody on this stage, and tearing each other down because we have a different plan, to me, is unacceptable. I have seen this script
Fuck you,
before.
you stupid goddamn. Yeah, they're gonna play that game all day. Oh yeah, well I mean, tearing each other down for having different ideas is just, we're above that. We're united. Meanwhile, the relentless smearing that never whatever. So, anyway, yeah, if I was dictator of the entire universe, I guess I'd get this climate shit started first, Can't have politics without the Earth, unless we go to Mars or something. But, yeah, I'd solve that first. We'd get our military shit figured out, and then I'd deal with social issues. That's my hierarchy. Because without the Earth, it doesn't matter. And if you can't protect your country, it doesn't matter what you do in your country, and then do shit in your country. That's my list. The end. That's my...
The CNN New York Times debate live from Otterbein University.
Oh, do we get to see non-politician people talk now? Let's see what fun advertisements we get. Oh, we don't. Oh, did I do a... Oh, I guess because I have ad blocker. Nice. Oh, actually, before I save the Earth, just out of spite, I would solve the Flint, Michigan water crisis first. That'd be the first one. Just because I'm pissed. And maybe the Earth gets destroyed by the time I solve the Flint, Michigan water crisis. I just do like the easiest way in, where I'd be like, okay, so the Flint pipelines are all fucked up. And the advisor goes, yes, the problem is it will take $200 gazillion to fix the pipelines. That's why we can't do it. And I'd be like, all right, just change the pipelines. Sir, the country will go bankrupt. Yeah, just fix them. But Social Security will die. Just fix the pipelines. But Coca-Cola will just fix them. and then the pipelines are getting fixed and the entire government runs out of money. And they're like, Khonjin has driven America into crisis, has completely bankrupted every government program. Social Security is dead. There is no Medicare for all. They're dying. People are dying in the streets. Why, Khonjin? Why? And it's like, yeah, but check out Flint. And Flint becomes this like modern day paradise. It's like 1,000 years into the future. It's like, we actually have the cleanest water now. It's so clean that it's actually killing humans. They're dying because they can't handle pure uncut water in its most refined form. So they start dying off because of how well I handle the Flint, Michigan water crisis. Also, what's up, a panda? This chat says that you're new here and to say hello, so I am. Buy every American a Chevy car. Okay. I'll do that, but only after I solve Flint. Who has risen the national debt? Who we have no clue who it goes to. It's pretty obvious who it goes to. China. It's China. The debt is to China. It's not to nobody, you know. There's an ad on CNN I can see. I'm in the cafeteria screen where Ron Reagan says he's not afraid of burning in hell. To fight debt, you get more debt. Crazy how none of them are discussing China. Huh, pretty crazy, huh? It's pretty insane stuff, isn't it? Is the national debt why all corporations are sucking on China's dong? It's a very, the very simplified answer is yes, but it's incredibly nuanced, you know. What if you could fix the water in Flint, but only if you made enough money to buy yourself to fix it? So like, I was a Tom Steyer type fucker. I'm a billionaire, and I can just fix things if I want to. If you're asking me, like, what if, I mean, that's cool. I'd like to have all that money and become completely removed from humanity and own slaves, you know? Typical billionaire shit, right? Khonjin, do you have any gum? No. Bernie, what's your stance on this? Khonjin, what if you could get superpowers, but those superpowers are to drink all the water in Flint and then spit it out, but it's clean? That's fine by me. I would, you know, I think that would establish a new political precedent where, you know, I'd be like, all right, guys, I'm going to fix the problem. And then they watch me on camera do it, and they have to decide if they're okay with it, because it's so gross.
And welcome back to the CNN New York Times Democratic presidential debate live from Otterbein University.
He looks like he's about to throw up.
Ohio. I want to turn now to foreign policy. President Trump ordered the withdrawal of all American forces from northern Syria, abandoning America's longtime Kurdish allies.
I'm a nostalgia-crat.
Turkey has now invaded Syria. ISIS detainees have escaped, and the Kurds have announced a new deal with the government in Damascus, a victory for Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad, and Russia and Iran.
Oh, watch this.
Vice President Biden, we know
Tulsi's going to get asked about this.
Troops from northern Syria in this way, but that is already in process. So would you send American troops back into northern Syria to prevent an ISIS resurgence and protect our Kurdish allies?
I would not have withdrawn the troops, and I would not have drawn the additional 1,000 troops who are in Iraq, which are in retreat now, being fired on by Assad's people, and the President of the United States saying, if those ISIS folks escape from the prisons they're in, they'll only go to Europe and infect us. It has been the most shameful thing that any president has done in modern history. Excuse me. In terms of foreign policy. And the fact of the matter is, I've never seen a time, and I've spent thousands of hours in the Situation Room, I've spent many hours in the ground.
Retreating from the Middle East is an idea so disgusting. It nearly makes Joe Biden throw up all of his guts.
Our are ashamed of what's happening here. What I would do is I would be making it real clear to Assad that, in fact, he's going to have a problem because Turkey is the real problem here. And I would be having a real lockdown conversation with Erdogan and letting him know that he's going to pay a heavy price for what he has done. Now, pay that price.
Just to clarify, Mr. Vice President, would you want American troops back in northern Syria?
I would want those
clarify,
1,000 troops to be protected by air cover, those 1,000 troops that are having to withdraw under fire, make it clear that they're not going anywhere, and have them protected, and work my way back toward what in fact needs to be done, protecting those Kurds. They lost their lives. This is shameful, shameful what this man has done.
We're finally all realizing that Erdogan is a piece of shit, but at what cost?
You said that American troops should get out of Syria now. You don't agree with how the president handled the withdrawal.
Let's see if they smear. Let's see it.
What would you have done differently? How would you have pulled out troops without the bloodshed we're seeing now?
Well, first of all, we've got to understand the reality of the situation there, which is that the slaughter of the Kurds being done by Turkey is yet another negative consequence of the regime change war that we've been waging in Syria. Donald Trump has the blood of the Kurds on his hand, but so do many of the politicians in our country from both parties
Big
who have
flex.
supported this ongoing regime change war in Syria that started in 2011, along with many in the mainstream media who have been championing and cheerleading this regime change war.
Yeah.
Not only that, but New York Times and CNN have also smeared veterans like myself for calling for an end to this regime change
Get 'em.
war. Just 2 days ago, the New York Times put out an article saying that I'm a Russian asset and an Assad apologist and all these different smears. This morning, a CNN commentator said on national
Holy
television
shit.
that I'm an asset of Russia. Completely despicable. As president, I will end these regime change wars by doing two things: ending the draconian sanctions that are really a modern-day siege.
I didn't think
which we
she'd
are
bring
seeing
it up,
Saudi
but she
Arabia wage
finally
against
whipped
Yemen
that
have
dick
caused
out
tens
onto
of
the table.
thousands of Syrian civilians to die and to starve. And I would make sure that we stop supporting terrorists like Al-Qaeda in Syria, who've been the ground force in this ongoing regime change war. I'd like to ask Senator Warren if she would join me in calling for an end to this regime change war in Syria, finally.
Ooh.
So look, I think that we ought to get out of the Middle East. I don't think we should have troops in the Middle East, but we have to do it the right way, the smart way. What this president has done is that he has sucked up to dictators. He has made impulsive decisions that often his own team doesn't understand. He has cut and run on our allies, and he has enriched himself at the expense of the United States.
Yeah, Tulsi's the truth. She don't give a fuck.
In Syria, he has created a bigger than ever humanitarian crisis. He has helped ISIS get another foothold, a new lease on life. I sit on the Armed Services Committee. I talk with our military leaders about this.
Senator.
I was in Iraq and went through the neighborhoods that ISIS destroyed. We need to get out, but we need to do this through a negotiated solution. There is no military solution
Mayor
in this region.
Mayor Buttigieg, like many of your fellow candidates on the stage, you've been calling for an end to endless wars. What's your response on Syria?
I think it should end.
Respectfully, Congresswoman, I think that is dead wrong. The slaughter going on in Syria is not a consequence of American presence. It's a consequence of a withdrawal and a betrayal by this president of American allies and American values.
What a
I didn't think
fucking
we should have
snake.
gone to Iraq in the first place. I think we need to get out of Afghanistan. But it's also the case that a small number of specialized special operations forces and intelligence capabilities were the only thing that stood between that part of Syria and what we're seeing now, which is the beginning of a genocide and the resurgence of ISIS. Meanwhile, soldiers in the field are reporting that for the first time they feel ashamed of what their country has done. We saw the spectacle, the horrifying sight of a woman with the lifeless body of her child in her arms asking what the hell happened to American leadership. And when I was deployed, I knew one of the things keeping me safe was the fact that the flag on my shoulder represented a country known to keep its word. And our allies knew it, and our enemies lose
Thank you,
that.
Mayor.
You take that away, you are taking away what makes America America.
Mayor.
It makes our troops and the world a much more dangerous place.
Good
Congresswoman
God.
Gabbard, your response.
Yeah, absolutely. So really what you're saying, Mayor Pete, is that you would continue to support having U.S. troops in Syria for an indefinite period of time to continue this regime change war that has caused so many refugees to flee Syria, that you would continue to have our country involved in a war that has undermined our national security. You would continue this policy of the U.S. actually providing arms and support to terrorist groups in Syria, like Al-Qaeda, HTS, Al-Nusra, and others, because they are the ones who have been the ground force in this regime change war. That's really what you're saying.
Mayor
No, you can embrace, or you can put an end to endless war without embracing Donald
Will
Trump's
you end the
policy
regime
as you're
change
doing.
war is the question.
What we are doing.
What is an endless war if it's
Allow
not
him to
yet
respond.
another regime change war?
Please allow him to respond.
What we are doing, or what we were doing in Syria, was keeping our word. Part of what makes it possible for the United States to get people to put their lives on the line to back us up is the idea that we will back them up too. When I was deployed, not just the Afghan National Army forces, but the janitors put their lives on the line just by working with U.S. forces. I would have a hard time today looking an Afghan civilian or soldier in the eye after what just happened over there. And it is undermining the honor of our soldiers. You take away the honor of our soldiers, you might as well go after their body armor next. This president has betrayed American values. Our credibility is in tatter. I will restore U.S. credibility before it is finally too late.
Senator Sanders, is Turkey still a U.S. ally? Should they remain in NATO?
I'm sorry, say that
Is
again?
Turkey still a U.S. ally? Should they remain in NATO?
No, Turkey is not a U.S. ally when they invade another country and engage.
Yeah, Pete Buttigieg was in the army, and so was Tulsi
The crisis
Gabbard.
here, as I think Joe said and Pete said, is when you begin to betray people, and in terms of the Kurds, 11,000 of them died fighting ISIS, 20,000 were wounded. And the United States said, we're with you, we're standing with you. And then suddenly one day, after a phone call with Erdogan, announced by tweet, Trump reverses that policy. Now you tell me, what country in the world will trust the word of the President of the United States? In other words, what he has done is wreck our ability to do foreign policy, to do military policy.
She's still in the army, by the way. She
Nobody
recently
in the world will believe his pathological
went
liar.
But this is really
overseas, if I'm
important
not
because
mistaken.
what this president has done shows that American leadership shapes the behavior of our allies, or sometimes allies too. Remember, the problem right now is not just that with our competitors. In, for example, a place like China, the people of Hong Kong rise up for democracy and don't get a peep of support from the president. It's not just the behavior of adversaries like Russia, but our one-time allies, like Saudi Arabia, which the CIA just concluded was responsible, as we all knew, for murdering and dismembering an American resident and journalist, and Turkey, which was an American ally. That's the point. We had leverage, but when we abandon the international stage, when we think our only choices are between endless war or total isolation, the consequence is the disappearance of U.S. leadership from the world stage, and that makes this entire world a more dangerous place.
Senator Klobuchar, should Turkey remain in NATO?
We need
Your
to
response.
work with our allies, to work with Turkey and bring them out. This is an outrageous thing that happened here, and I think we need to talk about this not only in terms of the horror of what happened here with Turkey, but the fact that our president blew it.
Did they do
and now
community
he's too
questions
proud
for
to say
these,
it.
or is
And
that
what
for
we
a
do
past
now,
debate?
We continue
I
that
think that's more for
humanitarian
town
aid,
halls.
But then we work with our allies to say, come back,
But
Turkey,
we'll see.
and stop this. Because what Mayor Pete has just said is true. Think about our other allies, Israel. How do they feel right now? Donald Trump is not true to his word when they are a beacon of democracy in the Mideast.
Guys, why aren't we thinking about how Israel
Out of
feels?
the Iranian agreement and leaves them holding the bag and gives the power to China and Russia. Think about the nuclear agreement with Russia that he precipitously pulled out of.
Which I read, by
It's
the way.
part of a pattern. It's not an isolated
Thank you, Senator.
incident.
Senator Harris, given that the U.S. abandoned our Kurdish allies, what would you do as president to convince the rest of the world that we can still be trusted?
That's a great question, Anderson, because the
I'd fix it.
Commander-in-Chief of the United States of America has as one of her greatest priorities and responsibilities to concern herself with the security of our nation and homeland. I serve on the Senate Intelligence Committee. I have, over a period of time, received classified information about the threats to our security and hotspots around the world. What has happened in Syria is yet again Donald Trump selling
Donald
folks
Trump
out.
is fucking
And in this
gay
case, he
and a
sold out the
noob,
Kurds, who,
and
yes, fought with us,
he
and thousands
sucks.
died in our fight
And
against
my
ISIS.
response
And let's be
is
clear,
that
what
he's
Donald Trump has done
fuck
because of that phone call with Erdogan
filled with
is
shitty
basically
diapers,
giving 10,000
fake and
ISIS
gay.
fighters a get-out-of-jail-free card. And you know who the winner is in this? There are four: Russia, Iran, Assad, and ISIS. This is a crisis of Donald Trump's making, and it is on a long list of crises of Donald Trump's making, and that's why do gotta go, and when I am Commander-in-Chief, we will stop this madness.
Secretary Castro,
Did she say dude gotta go while trying to sound
How are we gonna
serious?
get people to trust us again? The first thing is we got to boot Donald Trump out of the Oval Office so that people trust us again. You know, I also want to say the folks
Not the
listening
zinger he
saw
thought it was gonna be.
images of ISIS prisoners running free. To think about how absurd it is that this president is caging kids on the border and effectively letting ISIS prisoners run free. He has made a tremendous mistake and
Dude, I'm
total
gonna
disaster there in Syria. And just to connect the dots for a second,
do that.
if you're Kim Jong-un, for instance, why in the world would you believe anything that this president says to contain your nuclear weapons program when he tore up an Iran nuclear agreement that we just signed 4 years ago, which was the strongest agreement to contain Iran's nuclear weapons program, and now he's abandoned the very people that we gave our word to? I would make sure that we work with our allies to pressure Syria to stop the aggression. And I support efforts at stronger sanctions than this president has announced.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Senator Booker, the American intelligence community
Mr.
says that
Booker.
Russia is trying to capitalize on the power vacuums around the world, as we're seeing right now in northern Syria.
Voting
what
for not
specifically
Obama.
would you do as president to check Vladimir Putin's
Is Trump watching right now?
power on the
Yeah,
world
he is.
stage?
So first of all, understand
I'm sure he is.
that this president is turning the moral leadership of this country into a dumpster fire.
Okay.
We literally have great generals.
Donald Trump is a fucking complete idiot, and I hate him, and everybody else hates him pretty much. He doesn't play Smash Brothers, and I do. Most people can agree he's a pretty dumb guy, pretty stupid. I think that when we go back onto the world stage, wherever that is, I assume in the center of the world, I'm gonna say Trump's a gay noob. And that'll be the end of it. I think that'll solve the problem, really. This is what happens when you privatize the debates. You see these candidates running for president? And you see this logo over here? That's how you get this shit non-stop. Like, think about that. Isn't it a little nuts that a fucking company owns the debates? This debate is only on CNN. Yes, it is a CNN exclusive. You can watch it on the New York Times, I think, front page. But this debate's a CNN exclusive. I think they did one on ABC, but most of them have been on CNN. Alright, let me see this shit.
Spent extensive time alone with Putin as well as with Erdogan. And Erdogan understands that. You talk about should he stay in or out of NATO. He understands that he's out of NATO, he's in real trouble. But the fact of the matter is we have been unwilling in this administration because we have an erratic, crazy president who knows not a damn thing about
fucking president who is a fucking fuck. Yeah, so the only other time that this debate wasn't on CNN, it was on ABC, which is owned by Disney. So, you know, Disney, who also owns Fox News, by the way. Oh shit, they're friends.
Think what that did. He turns around and he questions whether or not
I missed it. I missed his stupid fucking thing. that was kind of upset. He probably called Bernie like Venezuela. What's your political stance anyway, Khonjin? My political stance is Bernie's gotta win or Yang's gotta win. Oh, Tulsi? What is going on here?
And the Iraqi border. And lastly, and I apologize for going up, but lastly, what is happening in Iraq is going to, in Afghanistan, as well as all the way over
Biden
to
clashes
Syria.
with Tulsi.
We have ISIS.
Come on.
Come here.
Come on.
They are going to, in fact, damage the United States of America. That's why we got involved in the first place and not ceded the whole area to Assad and to the Russians.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Congressman O'Rourke, Senate Democrats put out a report last year.
Fuck
on
you.
Russia's hostile actions around the world. They suggest the next.
Here's my political compass. Beto O'Rourke should go home. That's one of the quiz questions, right? On one of those tests, it's like, should Beto O'Rourke just go home? Yeah. Just go home and take a nap and fucking do something else. I mean, half these people should, but I'm going to let you listen to this answer.
Invading the world's greatest democracy. And being able to do it, thanks to Donald Trump, functionally with impunity so far, so much so that they are invading this democracy right now as we speak, still at the invitation of this president. So if there are not consequences, we will continue to see this problem going forward. But in addition, además, to answer the previous question that you asked, how do we stand up to Russia on the global stage? We do that by renewing our alliances and our friendships. That is what makes America stronger. There isn't enough money in this country. There aren't enough service members as brave and courageous as they are to do everything that we want to accomplish militarily around the world. And the Kurds are case in point. In fact, because we turned our backs on them, those Kurds who fought for us in Syria, helped to defeat ISIS, not just for themselves, but for the United States of America, it makes it more likely that we will have to send another generation of service members to fight those battles there. And then lastly, as General Mattis, who was invoked earlier, has said, we have two powers, one of intimidation and one of inspiration. We need to now focus on that latter power and make sure that we invest in diplomacy, in our State Department, and peacefully and nonviolently resolving our foreign policy goals, not on the backs of 18 and 19 and 20-year-olds anymore, but making sure that our diplomats are invested in, have the focus necessary by this next president to make sure that they can accomplish those goals for this country and for the world.
Now, let me ask you a question about that answer, and it sums up everything I hate. And fuck Tom Steyer. He's another dumbass who doesn't deserve to be on that stage. But let me ask you something. What about that answer had anything substantial in it? When they said, oh, how would we fix this? What did he say? Nothing. He took 20 minutes to say nothing at all. And on top of that, used the time to also throw in some bullshit conspiracy about Russia, which, again, that's what happens when you got CNN and bullshit running the show. What is this guy saying here?
Of our traditional allies.
Let's see.
Makes absolutely no sense. Let's go to the most
Doesn't make
important
sense.
international
Trump is
problem
fuck.
that we're facing, which no one has brought up, which is climate. We can't solve the climate crisis in the United States by ourselves. It's an international crisis. I've been working on it for 10 years, taking on the corporations, but we have to work with our allies and our frenemies around the world. So if you look at what Mr. Trump is doing, of course, he's been bought by the oil and gas companies. But any problem that we're going to do, but specifically climate, we're going to have to lead the world morally, we're going to have to lead it technologically, financially, and commercially. This is the proof that this kind of America first, go it alone, trust nobody and be untrustworthy is the worst idea I've ever heard, and I would change it on day one in every single way.
Mr. Yang, your response
Oh,
to Putin and
all right.
Russia.
Come on.
Of course.
Please, Yang.
We have to look at the
Please.
chain of events. How did we get here? The fact is we're falling apart at home, so we voted in Donald Trump, and he's now led us down this dangerous path with erratic and unreliable foreign policy. We have to let Russia know, look, we get it. We've tampered with other elections, you've tampered with our elections, and now it has to stop. And if it does not stop, we will take this as an act of hostility against the American people. I believe most Americans would support me on this. But Russian hacking of our democracy is an illustration of the 21st century threats. artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, climate change, loose nuclear material, military drones, and non-state actors. These are the threats that are going to require our administration to catch up in terms of technology. We all know we are decades behind the curve on technology. We saw when Mark Zuckerberg testified at Congress the nature of the questioning. As Commander-in-Chief, I will help pull us forward.
Thank you. Mark,
and that's
I
going
want
to be
to
the responsibility of the next president.
I want to respond to Mr. Yang. I don't see a moral equivalency between our country and Russia.
Yeah, fuck you.
Putin is someone who
Fuck
has
you.
shot down planes over Ukraine, who has poisoned his opponents, and we have not talked about what we need to do to protect
Here it
ourselves
comes.
from Russia invading our election. This wasn't meddling. That's what I do when I call my daughter on a Saturday night and ask her what she's doing. This was much more serious than that. This was actually invading our election. So to protect ourselves in 2020, what we need, one, backup paper ballots in every single state. That is the bill that I need, and we need to stop Mitch McConnell from stopping that from happening. And then we need to stop
That was the one thing I respected, is that Yang brought up that we meddle.
including ones last time in rubles,
Whatever.
without having to
All right,
say
let's see.
where those ads came from
Let's see.
and who paid for them. That's the Honest Ads Act. That's a bipartisan bill that I lead, and we can't wait
thank
to
you,
become
Senator.
president to get that done. We need to get it done now.
Thank you, Senator.
We want to turn back to domestic issues and the epidemic of gun violence.
And they just fucking left
We're
it
less
there.
than 100 miles from Dayton, Ohio, where 2 months ago, a gunman killed 9 people using an AR-15 style weapon with a high-capacity magazine. Congressman O'Rourke, in the last
That's a
debate, you
fucking
said,
shame.
quote, hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47, but when you were asked how you'd enforce a mandatory buyback, you said police wouldn't be going door to door. So how exactly are you going to force people to give up their weapons? You don't even know who has those weapons.
Look, we're going to make sure that the
Here
priority
we go.
is saving the lives of our fellow Americans.
Want to play the sober game? Take a shot every time he mentions any policy, anything substantive.
And AK-47s. Those are weapons of war. They were designed to kill people effectively, efficiently on a battlefield. You mentioned the massacre in Dayton. 9 people killed.
Don't worry, it's
in
coming.
under 40 seconds. In El Paso, Texas, 22 were killed in under 3 minutes. And the list goes on throughout.
Bust open that champagne.
So if the logic
These close
begins with those weapons being too dangerous to sell, then it must continue by acknowledging with 16 million AR-15s and AK-47s out there, they're also too dangerous to own.
Oh, that's
Every
interesting. How you gonna do it, Beto?
is a potential instrument of terror. Just ask Hispanics in Texas. Univision surveyed them.
The original question is how, and it's on the screen. There's the question on the screen.
A mass terror attack like the one in El Paso that was targeted at Mexican Americans and immigrants, inspired in part by this president's racism and hatred that he's directed.
Wow, the president's racist. That's pretty fucked up, Beto. Well, what you gonna do?
My fellow Americans to follow the law, the same way that we enforce any provision, any law that we have right now. We don't go to do anything in this country to
Yeah?
enforce the law. I expect Republicans, Democrats, gun owners, non-gun owners alike
Congressman,
to
let me
respect
follow
and
up.
follow the law.
Just to follow up, your expectations aside, your website says you will find people who don't give up their weapons. That doesn't take those weapons off the street. So to be clear, exactly how are you going to take away weapons from people who do not want to give them up and you don't know where they are?
If someone does not turn in an AR-15 or an AK-47, one of these weapons of war, or brings it out in public and brandishes it in an attempt to intimidate, as we saw when we were at Kent State recently, then that weapon will be taken from them. If they
How?
persist,
Yeah, how
there
you
will
gonna
be
do
other
that?
Consequences from law enforcement. But the expectation is that Americans will follow the law. I believe in this country. I believe in my fellow Americans. I believe that they will do the right thing.
If they don't follow the law, there will be consequences. And if they don't like those consequences, there will be more.
Picking a fight to try to stay relevant. Your response on guns?
Well, Congressman, you just made it clear that you don't know how this is actually going to take weapons off the streets. If you can develop the plan further, I think we can have a debate about it. But we can't wait. People are dying in the streets right
Oh,
now.
no.
We can't wait for
I hate to
universal
say it,
background
but,
checks till we finally have a shot
Pete
to
is
actually
fucking
get through.
him.
We can't wait to ban the sale of new weapons and high-capacity magazines so we don't wind up with millions more of these things on the street. We can't wait for red flag laws that are going to disarm domestic abusers and prevent suicides, which are not being talked about nearly enough as a huge part of the gun violence epidemic in this country.
I hate
Cannot
Pete, but he
wait
just
for purity
fucking
tests. We have
slapped
to
him.
just get something done.
This
Mr.
is not a
Congressman
purity
O'Rourke,
test.
your response.
This is a country that loses 40,000 of our fellow Americans every year to gun violence. This is a crisis, and we've got to do something about it. And those
what are you gonna
challenges that
do?
you described are not mutually exclusive to the challenges that I'm describing. I want to make sure we have universal background checks and red flag laws, and that we end the sale of these weapons of war. But to use the analogy of healthcare, it would be as though we said, look, we're for primary care, but let's not talk about mental health care because that's a bridge too far. People need that primary care now, so let's save that for another day. No, let's decide what we are going to believe in, what we are going to achieve, and then let's bring this country together in order to do that.
All right, how are you
Listen to
gonna
my
do
fellow
it?
Americans, to those moms who demand action, to those students who march for our lives, who in fact came up with this extraordinary, bold peace plan that calls for mandatory buybacks. Let's follow their inspiration and lead.
Yeah, what's
and
that
not be
plan?
led by the polls and the consultants and the focus groups. Let's
Mayor
do what's
Buttigieg,
right
your
while we have
response?
time to do what's right.
Mayor Buttigieg?
The problem isn't the polls, the problem is the policy. And I don't need lessons from you on courage, political or personal. Everyone on this stage is determined to get something done.
Beta.
Everyone on this stage recognizes, or at least I thought we did, that the problem is not other Democrats who don't agree with your particular idea of how to handle this. The problem is the National Rifle Association and their enablers in Congress, and we should be united in taking the fight to them.
That's a mischaracterization, Anderson. I got to answer this.
Oh my God.
Never took you or
Just-
anyone else
just
on
give it
who
up.
disagrees with me on this issue. But when you, Mayor Buttigieg, describe this policy as a shiny object, I don't care what that meant to me or my candidacy. But to those who have survived gun violence, those who've lost a loved one to an AR-15 and AK-47, March for Our Lives, formed in the courage of students willing to stand up to the NRA and conventional politics and poll-tested politicians. That was a slap in the face to every single one of those groups and every single survivor of a mass casualty assault.
It won't be if they don't clap.
AK-47. We must buy them back.
What we owe to those
And they're
survivors
not
is to
clapping.
actually deliver a solution. I'm glad you offered up that analogy to healthcare, because this is really important. We are at the cusp of building a new American majority to actually do things that congressmen and senators have been talking about with almost no impact for my entire adult life. This is really important, okay? On guns, we are this close to an assault weapons ban. That would be huge. And we're going to get wrapped around the axle in a debate over whether it's hell yes, we're going to take your guns. We have an opportunity to deliver health care to everybody, and some of the stage are saying it doesn't count.
Senator Booker, I want to give somebody, I want to give other
saying.
candidates a chance. Senator Booker, what's your response to Mayor Buttigieg?
Well,
He was sleeping.
I get worried about how we speak to each other, about each other, and what this last week has shown. As a young man in my neighborhood, I watched him grow up. I lived in some high-rise projects with him named Shahad,
And he got shot
on my block
by a
last year
gun.
with an assault rifle.
Yep, there it is.
I'm living with a sense of urgency on this problem because when I go home to my community, like millions of Americans, we live in communities where these weapons, where these gunshots are real every single day. And I know where the American public is. This is not about leadership.
That's
This is why when I
crazy.
talk about things
It's a
like
crazy
gun licensing
story.
and
What are
point
you
out the
gonna do?
differences between us, I'm not attacking people or their character or their courage on these issues. We all have courage, but it's frustrating that when the American people, 77% of Americans, agree on licensing, we don't need leadership right now. We just need folks that are going to stand up and follow where the people already are, because there are millions of Americans where this is a daily nightmare, where we're surrendering our freedoms to fear in this country. This is the first time in American history.
Yeah, no shit, Newark's dangerous. I used to have to go through Newark all the fucking time.
Nation on the planet Earth, and said to them, we can't protect you.
Thank you,
so
Senator.
in school, we're going to teach you how to hide. There are more duck and cover drills and shelter-in-place drills in America now than fire drills.
Fuck you!
I will bring in urgency to this issue and
Senator
make sure
Klobuchar.
that we end the scourge of mass violence in our
Senator
country.
Klobuchar, Senator Warren supports a voluntary. Senator Klobuchar, you support a voluntary buyback, if I'm correct, right? What is wrong with a mandatory buyback? Your response.
I just keep thinking of how close we are to finally getting something done on this. I'm looking at the mayor of Dayton. I met one of the survivors from that shooting. 30 seconds, 9 people killed. The public is with us on this in a big way. The majority of Trump voters want to see universal background checks right now.
Shut up. I'm sorry. I can't take this shit anymore. I cannot. I'll go back when they ask a different question, because they're all going to say the same shit. Just be like, well, it's, my asshole was shot. and, we gotta do something about it. What exactly? I don't know. The buybacks don't work. Didn't work in New Jersey. Did Yang just raise his finger? That's it. But on that alone,
Let's not mess
on
this
that
up
alone,
with this fight.
I will turn this shit.
Senator Warren, you support a voluntary
Fuck.
gun buyback of assault-style weapons as well. Why not a mandatory one?
So, look, I want to get what works done. I want to use the method we used, for example, with machine guns. We registered them. We put in a huge penalty if you didn't register them, and a huge tax on them, and we let people turn them in, and it got machine guns out of the hands.
So I think she will actually answer
The problem
it.
here that we need to focus on
But let's
is
see if-
first how widespread gun violence is. As you heard,
Oh my God.
it's not just about mass
Branch
shootings. It's what
Prime
happens
just
in
subbed
neighborhoods
with
all across
Twitch
this
Prime.
country. It is
Hell
about
yeah.
suicide. It is about domestic violence. This is not going to be a one and done. But we do one thing or two things or three things and then we're done. We have to reduce gun violence overall, and the question we have to ask is, why hasn't it happened? You say we're so close.
I don't think she'll answer it the
We've
right
been so
way,
close.
but let's see.
I stood in the United States Senate in 2013 when 54 senators voted in favor of gun legislation, and
Senator.
it didn't pass because of the filibuster.
Senator.
We have got to attack the corruption and repeal the
Senator
filibuster,
Harris.
or the gun industry will always have a veto over what happens.
Senator Harris, you disagree with Senator Warren. You think the buyback should be mandatory. Please respond.
5 million assault weapons are on the streets of America today.
Goodbye. No. All right. So do you want me to sum this up in 5 seconds about the mandatory buyback? The reason most people aren't in favor of it is because it doesn't work. That's it. That's the really simple answer. It's pretty goddamn simple. It doesn't work. But they can't just say it. It has to be I respect that Warren shifted it to the to being about the filibuster. But we've had these buybacks before. In New Jersey, we had a buyback where they wanted to get bump stocks off the streets. And you know how many, there was actually stats that came out about it. Do you know how many people returned them? Fucking zero. Zero people did it. And they're like, oh fuck, well. Anyways, let's see what this dumbass has to say.
Who has taken on the NRA and beat them twice.
Wow, he beat them! Well, I guess our problems are over. He fucking beat them, guys! So we'll just do it again. Oh,
The way to deal with those guns and those AR-15s and assault weapons that are on the street, are not on the street, that people own, is to do what we did with the National Firearms Act as it related to machine guns. You must register that weapon. You must register it. When you register it, the likelihood of it being used diminishes exponentially. I'm the only one that got moved to make sure that we could not have a magazine that had more than 10 rounds in it. I've done this. I know how to get it done. If you really want to get it done.
If you want to get it done like I got it done, it's like the same people when they get asked about, like, how would you fix Flint? They'd be like, I know how to do it because I already did it. It's like, if you fucking did it, there wouldn't be a problem. I get what he's trying to say, but this is some bullshit. All right.
Thank you very much for the question.
What do you want?
I grew up in neighborhoods where it wasn't uncommon to hear gunshots at night, and I can remember ducking into the backseat of a car when I was a freshman in high school.
When these politicians say they remember hearing gunshots at night, they're talking about when they're being driven home in a limousine and they have to go through one bad part of town. But they'll say, like, you know, in my tiny house that we're surrounded by and they can't say people of color, except to say certain violent individuals. That's what they mean. But anyways, I'll go back to this debate now.
At her house when she was playing video games with her nephew, He didn't even announce himself, and within 4 seconds, he shot her and killed her through her home window. She was in her own home. And so I am not going to give these police officers another reason to go door to door in certain communities, because police violence is also gun violence, and we need to address that.
Secretary Castro, thank you.
Nice.
Turning to another key issue here in Ohio and around the country, the opioid epidemic. Senator Klobuchar, CNN reached out to Ohio Democratic voters for their most pressing questions. Bree, a teacher in Proctorville, asks, in rural Ohio, the opioid epidemic has affected our communities and schools. I have many high school students who have lost one or both parents to heroin. Teachers are on the front lines daily witnessing these tragedies. How will you tackle this problem in general, but specifically, what will you offer people in rural communities where rehabilitation is not easily accessed and access to jobs is difficult?
I'll offer them a sandwich.
I want to thank her for this question. This is something that should never have happened to begin with. I remember when I was a prosecutor, these were not the kind of
And I heard
cases that
gunshots outside of my house in my Chevy, which was my house.
We now know why. As the evidence is coming out of those lawsuits, probably one of the most horrible things that I saw was the email from one of the pharma executives that actually said, keep pumping them out. They're eating them like Doritos. So
and I bring that up because someone
question,
said games.
Which is included in my plan, is that the people that should pay for this, that should pay for the treatment, are the very people that got people hooked and killed them in the first place. And that is the people that are manufacturing these opioids. That's the first way. And you can, with a 2 cents per milligram tax, bring in the money, plus with the federal master settlement, to help in rural areas where they're so isolated, and also in urban areas where it's, by the way, not just opiates. There's still meth issues and crack cocaine issues. This is personal for me. My dad
smokes
struggled
crack
with alcoholism his whole life. And by his third DWI, they said to him, the prosecutor, you got to face jail or you got to go to treatment. He picked treatment, and he was pursued by Grace.
By the
and
third
he's been sober ever
DWI?
since. And now he's 91 and in assisted living. And he said to me last year, it's hard to get a drink around here anyway. But he still has an AA
said it's hard to
group that
smoke
visits
crack
him there.
around
And
here
so for
anymore.
me, I believe that everyone in this country, including the people in rural America, have that same right to be pursued by Grace.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Steyer, how would you address the opioid epidemic that exists here in Ohio and around the country? Please respond.
Well, I think this is one of the most heartbreaking experiences that America's had. 72,000 people died of opioid overdoses last year. And that's not only a tragedy for them, it's a tragedy for their family and their communities.
The money
And so I
guy.
think we have to treat this as a health crisis. We have to move the
Health
resources
crisis rules.
and the support there to try and help people. But I think that Senator Klobuchar makes a good point. The reason I'm running for president is that we have a broken government. And we have a broken government because corporations have bought it. And every single one of these conversations is about that broken government. It's about drug companies buying the government and getting what they want. It's about the gun manufacturers buying the government and get what we want. We need to break the corporate stranglehold on our government. I've put forward actual structural changes, including term limits, a national referendum, the end to the idea that corporations are people and have the rights of American citizens politically, and make it
And
a
a
lot easier
giant
to vote.
golden
These
throne.
corporations have taken over our government, and 72,000 deaths last year are the tragic
Thank you, Mr.
result.
Steyer. Mr. Yang, you want to decriminalize the possession
There we
and
go.
use of small amounts of opioids, including heroin. How would that solve the crisis?
That's exactly right. And we have to recognize this is a disease of capitalism run amok. There was a point when there were more opioid
buddy.
prescriptions in the state of Ohio than human beings in the state of Ohio. And for some reason, the federal government thought that was appropriate. They ended up levying a $600 million fine against Purdue Pharma, which sounds like a lot of money, until you realize that company made $30 billion. They got a 2% fine, and they killed tens of thousands of Americans an hour. So if the government turned a blind eye to this company spreading a plague among its people, then the least we can do is put the resources to work in our communities so our people have a fighting chance to get well. Even though this is not a money problem, we all know this is a human problem. And part of helping people get the treatment that they need is to let them know that they're not going to be referred to a prison cell. They will be referred to treatment and counseling. I talked to an EMT in New Hampshire, and he said he saves the same addicts over and over again. Because the fact is, after you save someone who's ODing, you just bring them back to their house and they OD again the following week. So we need to decriminalize opiates for personal use. We have to let the country know this is not a personal failing. This was a systemic government failing. And then we need to open up safe consumption and safe injection sites around the country because they save lives.
Thank you, Mr. Yang.
Hell
Congressman
yeah.
O'Rourke, is decriminalizing opioids part of the solution? Please respond.
Yes, it is, for many of the reasons that Mr. Yang just described. And also just from some personal experiences I've had as a member of Congress where constituents of mine have come forward, in some cases publicly, at a town hall meeting to describe their addictions. I remember a veteran...
Yeah, that was a good
told me that he
answer.
bought
And
heroin
now
off the street
Beto O'Rourke
because he
gets
was
to
originally
pitch in his
prescribed
2
an
fucking
opioid
cents about
at
it.
the VA. Now, imagine that veteran, instead of being prescribed an opioid, had been prescribed marijuana because we made that legal in America, ensured the VA could prescribe it, expunged the arrest records of those who've been arrested for possession, and made sure that he was not prescribed something to which he would become addicted. I also want to agree with Senator Klobuchar. Until we hold those responsible accountable for their actions, Purdue Pharma, Johnson & Johnson, we're going to continue to have this problem going on again. So that veteran that I met, and anyone with drug addiction today, is not a problem for the criminal justice system. They're an opportunity for our public health system.
Senator Harris, you want to hold the drug manufacturers that fueled the crisis accountable. Are you in favor of sending those drug company executives to jail?
I am. And I will tell you, as a former prosecutor, I do think of this as being a matter of justice and accountability, because they are nothing more than some high-level dope dealers. They have been engaged.
Yeah, you can clap.
And I've seen it happen before. I've taken on the pharmaceutical companies when I was Attorney General of California and led the second largest Department of Justice. I've seen what they do. The biggest pharmaceutical companies, the 8 biggest pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies last year profited $72 billion on the backs of people like the families that we are talking about that have been overwhelmed by this crisis, which is a public health epidemic. And they knew what they were doing. They were marketing false advertising. They knew what they were pushing in communities and states like Ohio without any concern about the repercussions, because they were profiting and making big bucks. And yes, they should be held accountable. This is a matter of justice. And so as President of the United States, I would ensure that the United States Department of Justice understand that you want to deal with
I will give
who is
people
really a
justice,
because
I hate these drug-dealing little bitches,
and let's go over after these pharmaceutical
especially the
companies for what
weed
they've been
guys.
doing to
They're gonna
destroy our country in
fucking
states
die
like
if I'm
Ohio.
Thank you,
president.
Senator. Secretary Castro, are you in favor of sending those drug company executives to prison? Please respond.
Yes, I am. They need to be held accountable, not only financially, but also with criminal penalties. And, you know, you can draw a straight line between making sure...
Is there like a random mic that's on? Did you hear when like Beto was answering? It sounds like, yes, reach Beto.
A decade and a half ago.
Thank you.
Now to the issue of candidates and their health. Senator Sanders, I want to start with you. I want to start, we're moving on, Senator, I'm sorry.
I'm feeling great, but I would like to respond to that question.
I want to start by saying,
And Senator Sanders is in favor of medical marijuana. I want to make sure that's clear as well. Thank you.
Senator Sanders, this debate does mark your, this debate, sir, does mark your return to the campaign trail. Okay, go ahead and finish your point, and then I'll ask my question, Senator.
I'm more than happy to answer your question, but I wanted to pick up on what Kamala and Corey and others have said. Let's take a deep breath. Take a look at this opioid epidemic. You have executives, CEOs of major pharmaceutical companies making tens of millions of dollars a year. And in this particular case with the opioids, they knew that they were selling a product to communities all over this country which were addicting people and killing them. And last year, the top 10 drug companies made $69 billion in profit.
Uh-oh.
This is what unfettered capitalism is doing to this country. And it's not just the drug companies. Right now, the CEOs in the fossil fuel industry know full well that their product is destroying this world, and they continue to make huge
Right.
profits.
Senator.
That is why we need a political revolution that
Thank you,
says
Senator.
enough is enough to this behavior.
Senator, we are all very glad you're feeling well, as you just said. But there is a question on a lot of people's minds, and I want to address it tonight. You're 78 years old, and you just had a heart attack.
You're
How
gonna
do you
die.
reassure Democratic voters that you're up to the stress of the presidency?
Well, let me invite you all to a major rally we're having in Queens, New York, BernieSanders.com. We're going to have a special guest at that event, and we are going to be mounting a vigorous campaign all over this country. That is how I think I can reassure the American people. But let me take this moment, if I might, to thank so many people from all over this country, including many of my colleagues up here, for their love, for their prayers, for their well wishes. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I'm so happy to be back here with you this evening.
Let me
Vice
take this
President
moment, if I
Biden,
might, to do a
If you're
backflip.
elected, you will turn 80 during your first term. Last
Ooh.
month, former President Jimmy Carter said he could not have undertaken the duties of the presidency at 80 years old. Why are you so sure that you can?
Because I've watched it, I know what the job is, I've been engaged. Look, one of the reasons I am running is because of my age and my experience. With it comes wisdom. We need someone to take office this time around who on day one can stand on the world stage, command the respect of world leaders from Putin to our allies, and know exactly what has to be done to get this country back on track. It is required now more than any time in any of our lifetimes to have someone who has that capacity on day one. That's one of the reasons why I decided to run. Why I decided to run this time, because I know what has to be done. I've done it before. I've been there when we pulled the nation out of the worst financial recession in history. I've been there, and I've got so many pieces of legislation passed, including the Affordable Care Act, as well as
Is
making
the
sure
Q&A
that
person
we had
just
the
going to go
Recovery
down the
Act,
line
which kept
asking
us from
everyone
going
why
into
they're so
depression.
old?
I know what has to be done.
I hope
I will
so.
not need any on-the-job training the day I take office. And I will release my medical records, as I have 21 years of my tax record, which no one else on this stage has done, so that you can have full transparency as to my health and what I am doing.
Just to be clear,
The
Mr. Vice
tax
President,
records.
when will you release those records?
Before the first vote,
Before Iowa,
yes.
not by the end of this year.
Well, before Iowa, I mean, look, I've released them before. I mean, I released 55 pages of mine. I'm the only guy that's released anything up here.
Senator
What?
Warren, like Senator Sanders,
What?
Vice President Biden, if you win the presidency, you would be the oldest president ever inaugurated in a first term. You would be 71. 40% of Democratic primary voters say they think a candidate under the age of 70 is more likely to defeat President Trump. What do you say to them?
Well, I say I will outwork, outorganize, and outlast anyone, and that includes Donald Trump, Mike Pence, or whoever the Republicans get stuck with. Look, the way I see this, the way we're going to win is by addressing head-on what
Why
most
is this
Americans
important?
know in
Asks
their bones.
a
And
chat
that is
user.
that the
It's funny because it isn't. They just gotta choose a good VP. That's it. That's really it. If one of these guys are gonna get fucking shot, then just choose a good VP. The end. Anyways.
that. They think that running some kind of vague campaign that nibbles around the edges of big problems in this country is a winning strategy. They are wrong. If all Democrats can promise is after Donald Trump it will be business as usual, then we will lose. Democrats win when we call out what's broken and we show how to fix it. Democrats will win when we fight for the things that touch people's
Democrats
lives.
will win
Things like
when they
childcare
die
and
in office.
healthcare
And I
housing
promise I
costs.
will die.
Democrats will win when we give people a reason
Thank you,
to
Senator
get
Warren.
in the fight.
Congresswoman Gabbard, you're 38 years old, and you would be the youngest president if elected. Should age matter when choosing a president?
I'm glad you asked, because I was going to say it's not fair to ask these three about their health and their fitness to serve as president, but not every other one of us. I am grateful
Hell
to
yeah,
have
dude.
been trained very well by the Army and do my best to stay in shape. But here's the real question I believe you should be asking is, who is fit to serve as our commander-in-chief? This is the most important responsibility that the president has. What Donald Trump has been doing in Syria and what we have just seen with him inviting the Turkey to come in and slaughter the Kurds show what an unfit president looks like. It highlights how critical it is that we have a president and commander-in-chief who is ready on day one, bringing experience and understanding in foreign policy and national security, bringing the experience that I have, both serving in Congress now for nearly 7 years, serving on the Foreign Affairs Committee, serving on the Armed Services Committee, subcommittees related to terrorism and upcoming threats, serving on the Homeland Security Committee, the experience that I have as a soldier, serving for over 16 years in the Army National Guard, deploying twice to the Middle East, being able to serve in different capacities, joint training exercises, training the Kuwait National Guard. I understand the importance of our national security. I am prepared to do this job, to fulfill this responsibility as Commander-in-Chief on day one. I'd like to ask our other candidates this question. I'd like to start with Senator Warren.
Sorry,
what her experience and background is.
I'm sorry, thank you. We're going to take another break now. The CNN New York Times debate live from Otterbein University.
Sorry, but
here in
fuck you,
Ohio.
you
We'll be
actual
back
little
in just a
bitch.
few moments.
I do like that she keeps trying to put other candidates on the spot, but you know, CNN's not going to be having any of this shit. Sorry, but we need to get back to the shit that doesn't matter. Oh my god. Yeah, so far, this is pretty much not even exceeded. It's fulfilled my expectations for what this would be, which is a fucking mess. It's not even a debate. Like, it's CNN's framing for every question to basically just like, it's like a circle jerk. I know this isn't groundbreaking news by any means, but yeah, it's like, welcome to narrative formation. Today we will form a narrative with these shitty goddamn questions where you have, okay, let's count them. You got 4, 8, 12 fuckers on stage, and 9 of them are all gonna have the same answer. What do you think about the fucking Kurds getting abandoned? Well, I think it was bad that the Kurds got abandoned. Well, I think that abandoning the Kurds was bad. Well, if you want my 2 cents, I have a top 10 video on my YouTube channel of list of countries we should not abandon, and at number 1 it is the Kurds. The Kurds is a country, and we should not abandon them. Yeah, Booker, Beto, Buttigieg, or Kamala, it is a fucking waste. I would even argue listening to Biden's a waste, but he's the front runner, so it's a little important. What do you think about the fact that Bernie is a Venezuelan and also my mom? Bernie, you like socialist policies. Venezuela has socialist policies. Why are you the same as Venezuela? Why is that? Do you ever consider that you are a dictator? When I was a child, I was abandoned by President Trump. He threw me out of the trunk of a Chevy into a neighborhood that had black people in it, and that made me very uncomfortable. One of the politicians realizes they're speaking their thoughts out loud. It's fucking insanity. The concept of just one company owning the debates. That's like, I get it. It's not new, but it still is like horrifying. Warren is just Bernie light. So although she's like half a Bernie, I guess that's what you mean by Warren light. But still. And there was a gun in the same mile. Also, I wonder if they will bring up Hong Kong. Big lol. Big lollin'. We're entering they're gonna bring up China, but it'll be about like IP stealing and shit like that. I mean, like, China is kind of bad on trade, and we gotta do something about that. It's unfair. That's as far as it'll go. Yeah. But I tell you who will get asked about China. It will be Yang. And yes, it will be for the reason you think. They've done it. I didn't even notice this until someone on Twitter pointed it out. The only time Yang ever gets asked a question, it's about China. The last debates, anyway. Yeah, I would love to ask questions at the debate. That'd be fucking great.
And welcome back to the CNN New York Times Democratic presidential debate. Mark Lacey from the New York Times starts off our questioning. Mark?
Thank you. Let's turn to the growing concerns over the power of big tech companies. Mr. Yang, Senator Warren is calling for companies like Facebook, Amazon, and Google to be broken up. Is she right? Does that need to happen?
As usual, Senator Warren is 100% right in diagnosing the problem. There are absolutely excesses in technology, and in some cases, having them divest parts of their business is the right move. But we also have to be realistic that competition doesn't solve all of the problems. It's not like any of us wants to use the fourth best navigation app. That would be like cruel and punishment. There's a reason why no one is using Bing today. Sorry, Microsoft, it's true. So it's not like breaking up these big tech companies will revive Main Street businesses around the country. And as the parent of 2 young children, I'm particularly concerned about screen use and its effect on our children. Studies clearly show that we're seeing record levels of anxiety and depression coincident with smartphone adoption and social media use. Breaking up the tech companies does nothing to make our kids healthier. What we have to do is we have to home in on the specific problems we're trying to solve and use 21st century solutions for 21st century problems. Using a 20th century antitrust framework will not work. We need new solutions and a new toolkit.
Thank you. Senator Warren, is Mr. Yang wrong? Your response, please.
Look, I'm not willing to give up and let a handful of monopolists dominate our economy and our democracy. It's time to fight back. Think about it this way. When you talk about how it works in competition, about 8%, 9% of all retail sales happen in bricks and sticks stores, happen at Walmart. About 49% of all sales online happen in one place, that's Amazon. It collects information from every little business. And then Amazon does something else. It runs the platform, gets all the information, and then goes into competition with those little businesses. Look, you get to be the umpire in the baseball game, or you get to have a team, but you don't get to do both at the same time. We need to enforce our antitrust laws, break up these giant companies that are dominating big tech, big pharma, big oil, all of them.
Mr. Steyer, your response?
Look, I agree with Senator Warren that in fact monopolies have to be dealt with. They either have to be broken up or regulated, and that's part of it. But we have to understand that Mr. Trump is going to be running on the economy. He's going to be saying he's the person who can make it grow. I started a business from scratch, one room, no employers, and built a multi-billion-dollar international business. We're going to have to show the American people that we don't just know how to tax and have programs to break up companies, but also talk about prosperity. Talk about investing in the American people.
Staring into my soul.
The innovation and competition of the American private sector. In fact, if we want to beat Mr. Trump, I think somebody who can go toe-to-toe with him and show him to be a fraud and a failure as a business person and a fraud and a failure as a steward of the American economy is going to be necessary. He is one. His tax plan's a failure. His trade war is a failure. I would love to take him on as a real businessman and show that, in fact, He's failed the American people, and he has to go.
Thank you, Mr. Steyer. Senator Booker, how do you respond? Would a President Booker break up big tech companies like Facebook and Amazon?
And anybody that does not think that we have a massive crisis in our democracy with the way these tech companies are being used, not just in terms of anti-competitive practices, but also to undermine our democracy. We have seen it in the 2016 election, practices being used that have not been corrected now. We need regulation and reform. And antitrust, I mean, Robert Bork right now is laughing in his sleep. We have a reality in this country where antitrust from pharma to farms is causing trouble. And we have to deal with this. As President of the United States, I will put people in place.
I just think I should give context for people who don't know Cory Booker's history, is that he's probably one of the most corrupt congressmen ever, getting the most money from huge donors and lobbyists and shit like that. If I'm not mistaken, he has taken the most. But anyway, back to this.
I'm not sure if it's appropriate for a president to designate which companies should be broken up. So what's the proper level of oversight here?
Yeah, we need to set very tough, very
oh yeah! Finally, some substance.
That allow these social media platforms where we, the people, have become the product, to abuse that public trust and to do so at extraordinary profits. Right now, we treat them functionally as
right now. These fuckers are bad. We gotta take the fight to them, lads.
Our pictures and personal information that they share with others. We would allow no publisher to do what Facebook is doing, to publish that ad that Senator Warren has rightfully called out, that CNN has refused to air because it is untrue and tells lies about the vice president. Treat them like the publisher that they are. That's what I will do as president, and we will be unafraid to break up big businesses if we have to do that, but I don't think it is the role of a president or a candidate for the presidency to specifically call out which companies will be broken up. That's something that Donald Trump has done, in part because he
nationalized social media
and wants to diminish their power. Is not something that we should do. So tough rules of the road, protect your personal information, privacy, and data, and be fearless in the face of these tech giants.
Senator Sanders, your response?
When we talk about a rigged economy, it's not just the grotesque level of income and wealth inequality. It is also the fact that in sector after sector, whether it is Wall Street, where you have 6 banks that have assets equivalent to half of the GDP of the United States, whether it is media, where you have 10 media companies that control about 90% of what the American people see.
Hell yeah.
Read. Whether it is agribusiness, where we see merger after merger, which is resulting in the decline of family-based farming in this country. We need a president who has the guts to appoint an attorney general who will take on these huge monopolies, protect small business, and protect consumers by ending the price fixing, which we see every day.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Harris, to you, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg says that splitting up big tech companies will make election interference more likely because the companies won't be able to work together to fight it. Could breaking up these companies make the spread of disinformation worse?
No, I don't agree with that at all. And serving on the Senate Intelligence Committee, working with Amy Klobuchar on what we need to do to upgrade the elections infrastructure, knowing that Russia needs to be held accountable for the fact that they interfered in the election of the President of the United States, and it will attempt to do it again. That's a ridiculous argument he's making. But I do want to also say this. What we're talking about is a grave injustice when rules apply to some but not equally to all, and in particular when the rules that apply to the powerless don't apply to the powerful.
Really, do you care? Like, really? It's just the same shit. It's just the same shit. It doesn't even remotely... There's not even an iota of variance. I guess she's going to say Elizabeth Warren is a gay noob because I agree with her, but I don't agree with how she's going to do it. All right, let's see if this clash of air quotes titans actually takes place.
In El Paso, that shooter in his manifesto was informed by how Donald Trump uses that platform. And this is a matter of corporate responsibility. Twitter should be held accountable and shut down that site. It is a matter of safety and corporate
Shut down Twitter. All right, never mind. Somehow I'm voting for Kamala Harris. Shut it down. Please.
That's our job.
They did it. They shut it down. Hell yeah. Ask and you shall receive. Well, great.
But the way...
Join me in saying that his Twitter account should be shut down.
Let's figure out why it is that we have had laws on the books for antitrust for over a century, and yet for decades now. We've all called out how the big drug companies are calling the shots in Washington, big ag, how the gun industry, big tech. You know, we really need to address the elephant in the room, and that is how campaigns are financed.
You can't say you're for corporate responsibility if it doesn't apply to everyone.
I announced this morning that I'm not going to take any money from big tech executives, from Wall Street executives. We've already agreed, Bernie and I, we're not taking any money from big pharma executives. You can't go behind closed doors and take the money of these executives and then turn around
I don't like that, Bernie and I.
that these are the people who are actually finally going to enforce the laws. We need campaign finance rules
Thank you,
and
Senator Warren.
practices
Senator Harris?
that support us all.
You can't. It does not represent a system of justice to say that the rules will apply differently to different people. This is a matter, you are saying, of holding big tech accountable.
Yes.
Holding big tech accountable because they have an outsized influence on people's perceptions about issues, and they actually influence behaviors. We all have to agree this is their power. It is immense.
Senator Klobuchar, let me bring you in here. Your response.
I'm not finished.
Bruh, you're finished.
What I'm saying is that it seems to me that you would be able to join me in saying the rule has to apply to Twitter the same way it does to Facebook.
Look, I think all of the rules should apply across the board. I don't have a problem with that.
So you will
what
join
I
me in
do
saying
have
Twitter
a
should shut down that
problem
account?
with is that if we're going to talk seriously about breaking up big tech, then we should ask if people are taking money from the big tech executives. If we're going to talk seriously about breaking up big drug companies, we should ask if people are financing their campaigns by taking money from big drug executives. If we are going to talk about Wall Street and having some serious regulation over Wall Street, we should ask if people are funding their campaigns by taking money from those executives.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar. Let's bring you in here.
I would like to have a different take on this. I was in the private sector for 14
Watch
years.
how different this take's gonna be.
Companies that were fighting to get into the telecom.
It's gonna blow your
market, so I had a
fucking
life
mind.
before government. And what I saw was when we got more competition there, the prices went down in a big way in the long distance market. Well, right now we have another Gilded Age going on, and I am the lead Democrat on the Antitrust Committee. I have the lead legislation, which means, one, changing the standard so we can do a better job of doing just what we've been talking about here, is breaking down some of this consolidation, and also making sure that the enforcers have the resources to take them on because they're so overwhelmed. But the issue here is this. Start talking about this as a pro-competition issue. This used to be a Republican and Democratic issue because America, our founding fathers, actually wanted to have less consolidation. We were a place of entrepreneurship. We are seeing a startup slump in this country, and this means everything from tech on down.
Yeah, I think that we're on the right track in terms of updating how we look at monopolistic practices and setting, as Congressman O'Rourke said, rules for the road.
But the thing is, George Bush did 9/11. I'm just throwing it out there. You know what? I can't take it anymore. I've been keeping this inside me for so long. Wow.
Out of business.
Pretty impressive take by Julian Castro.
Not paying
over
them as
here.
they should, not giving them the benefits they should. Or it's a number of other companies, big tech companies, we need to take a stronger stance when it comes to cracking down on monopolistic trade practices, and that's what I would do as president.
Thank you,
Best
Mr.
way we
Secretary.
can fight back. The best way we can fight back against big tech companies is to say our data is our property. Right now, our data is worth more than oil. How many of you remember getting your data check in the mail? It got lost. It went to Facebook, Amazon, Google. If we say this is our property and we share in the gains, that's the best way we can balance the scales against the big tech companies.
There's a bigger issue here.
Turning to women's reproductive rights. Ohio is now one of several states that has banned abortions after as early as 6 weeks of pregnancy. Many women don't even know they are pregnant at that time. The Ohio law, like many others, is being challenged in the courts and has not yet taken effect. Senator Harris, if states prevail on restricting abortion, what's your plan to stop them?
My plan is as follows. For any state that passes a law that violates the Constitution, and in particular Roe v. Wade, our Department of Justice will review that law to determine if it is compliant with Roe v. Wade and the Constitution, and if it is not, that law will not go into effect. That's called deterrence. Because the reality is that while we still have, as I said earlier, these state legislators who are outdated and out of touch, mostly men who are telling women what to do with their bodies, then there needs to be accountability and consequence. But, I'll go further. You may have seen it. I questioned Brett Kavanaugh when I was a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee and asked him, as a nominee to serve on the United States Supreme Court, could he think of any law that tells a man what to do with his body? And the answer was no. The reality of it is, this is still a fundamental issue of justice for women in America. Women have been given the responsibility to perpetuate.
It's all great talk, but check that shit out. Ooh, the question. Ooh. And by the way, I don't consider the answer of they'll follow the law as an actual plan. That doesn't mean they'll clap, but it doesn't mean shit.
Your response.
I would codify Roe v. Wade and make it the law of the land. But what I want to do right now is just say, what if Donald Trump is standing up here on the debate stage with me?
You can't have comedic timing like that. Fuck you.
You said you wanted to do this in your race for president. You actually said that you wanted to put women in jail. Then you tried to dial it back, and you said you wanted to put doctors in jail. That is exactly what the Alabama law is. It put doctors in jail for 99 years. You, Donald Trump, are not on the side of women. You are not on the side of people of this country when over 75% of people want to keep Roe v. Wade on the book, when over 90% of people want to make sure they have available.
All right, the fast forward version. The abortion is good to have, and Donald Trump is bastard, and they'll follow the law of the land. All right. Oh, Corey, here we go.
These laws we see from Alabama to Ohio, they're not just attacks on one of the most sacrosanct ideals in our country, liberty, the ability to control your own body. But they're particularly another example of people trying to punish, trying to penalize, trying to criminalize poverty. Because this is disproportionately affecting low-income women in this country, people in rural areas in this country. It is an assault on the most fundamental ideal that human beings should control their own body. And so the way, as President of the United States, I'm going to deal with this is, first of all, elevating it like we have with other national crises to a White House level position. And I will create the Office of Reproductive Freedom and Reproductive Rights in the White House, and make sure that we begin to fight back on a systematic attack that's gone on for decades to undermine Roe v. Wade. I will fight to codify it, and I will also make sure that we fight as this country to repeal the Hyde Amendment so that we are leading the planet Earth in defending the global assault we see on women right now.
Congresswoman Gabbard, your response.
This is often one of the most difficult decisions that a woman will ever have to make, and it's unfortunate to see how in this country it has for so long been used as a divisive political weapon. I agree with Hillary Clinton on one thing, disagree with her on many others, but when she said abortion should be safe, legal, and rare, I think she's correct. We see how the consequences of laws that you're referring to can often lead to a dangerous place, as we've seen them as they're passed in other countries, where a woman who has a miscarriage past that 6 weeks could be imprisoned because abortion would be illegal at that point. I do, however, think that there should be some restrictions in place. I support codifying Roe v. Wade while making sure that during the 3rd trimester, abortion is not an option unless the life or severe health consequences of a woman are at risk.
Thank you very much. The Supreme Court is currently made up of 5 Republican-appointed justices and 4 appointed by Democrats. The court just announced it will hear arguments in a case challenging some abortion rights. Vice President Biden, the Constitution does not specify the number of justices that serve on the Supreme Court. If Roe v. Wade is overturned on your watch and you can't pass legislation in Congress, would you seek to add justices to the Supreme Court to protect women's reproductive rights?
I would not get into court packing. We had 3 justices. Next time around, we lose control. They had 3 justices. We began to lose any credibility for the court has at all. I want to point out that the justices I've supported, when I defeated Robert Bork, and I say when I defeated Robert Bork, I made sure we guaranteed a woman's right to choose for a better part of a generation. I would make sure that we move and insist that we pass, we codify Roe v. Wade. The public is already there. Things have changed. And I would go out and I would campaign against those people in the state of Ohio, Alabama, et cetera, who in fact are throwing up this barrier. Reproductive rights are a constitutional right. And in fact, every woman should have that right. And so I would not pack the court. What I would do is make sure that the people that I recommended for the court, from Ruth Bader Ginsburg to Elena Kagan, who used to work for me, to others, that they in fact support the right of privacy, on which the entire notion of a woman's right to choose is based. And that's what I would do. No one would get on the court. And by the way, if in fact at the end of this, beginning next year, if in fact one of the justices steps down, God forbid, in fact, I would make sure that we would do exactly what McConnell did last time out. We would not allow any hearing to be held
Thank you, Mr.
for
Vice
a new
President.
justice.
Mayor Buttigieg, you have discussed expanding the court from 9 to 15 justices. What's your response to the Vice President?
That's right. When I proposed reforming the Supreme Court, some folks said that was too bold to even contemplate. Now, I'm not talking about packing the court just with people who agree with me, although I certainly will appoint people who share my values. For example, the idea that women's reproductive freedom is an American right. What I'm talking about is reforms that will depoliticize the court. We can't go on like this, where every single time there is a vacancy, we have this apocalyptic ideological firefight over what to do next. Now, one way to fix this would be to have a 15-member court where 5 of the members can only be appointed by unanimous agreement of the other 10. Smarter legal minds than mine are discussing this in the Yale Law Journal and how this could be done without a constitutional amendment. But the point is that not everybody arrives on a partisan basis. There are other reforms that we could consider, from term limits. Don't forget, justices used to just retire like everybody else, to a rotation off the appellate bench.
Thank you.
I'm not wedded to a particular solution, but I am committed to establishing a commission on day one that will propose reforms to depoliticize the Supreme Court, because we can't
Thank
go
you
on
very
like
much,
this.
Mayor Buttigieg. Secretary Castro, he's talking about making the court bigger. Your response, is it a good idea?
I don't think it is. I wouldn't pack the court. You know, I think the plan that Mayor Pete mentioned is an interesting one, but I actually believe if we were selecting from one of those things, that the smarter move might be to look at term limits or having people cycle off from the appellate courts, so that you would have a replenishment of perspective. I would also make sure that I appoint as president people who respect the precedent of Roe versus Wade, that we codify Roe versus Wade, and that we do away with things like the Hyde Amendment, because you shouldn't only be able to have reproductive freedom if you have money. We have to think about people who do not, people who are poor. And we have to concern ourselves not only with reproductive freedom, but also reproductive justice, and invest in the ability of every woman to be able to make a choice and to be able to have her health care needs met.
Senator Warren, would you consider adding more justices to the Supreme Court to protect Roe v. Wade? Your response?
I think there are a number of options. I think, as Mayor Buttigieg said, there are many different ways. People are talking about different options, and I think we may have to talk about them. But on Roe versus Wade, can we just pause for a minute here? I lived in an America where abortion was illegal, and rich women still got abortions. because they could travel, they could go to places where it was legal. What we're talking about now is that the people who are denied access to abortion are the poor, are the young, are 14-year-olds who are molested by a family member. And we now have support across this country. 3 out of 4 Americans believe in the rule of Roe versus Wade. When you've got 3 out of 4 Americans supporting it, we should be able to get that passed through Congress. We
Senator,
should not
thank
leave
you.
this to the Supreme Court. We should do it through democracy because we can.
Thank you very much, Senator.
As some of you have indicated, the differences between all of you on this stage are tiny compared to the differences between you and President Trump. There are, however, fundamental differences between many of you on this stage. Vice President Biden, just on either side of you, Senator Warren is calling for big structural change. Senator Sanders is calling for a political revolution. Will their visions attract the kind of voters that the Democrats need to beat Donald Trump?
Well, I think their vision is attracting a lot of people. And I think a lot of what they have to say is really important. But, Senator Warren said we can't be running any vague campaigns. We got to level with people. We've got to level with people and tell them exactly what we're going to do, how we're going to get it done, and if you can get it done. I'm going to say something that is probably going to offend some people here, but I'm the only one on the stage that's gotten anything really big done, from the Violence Against Women Act to making sure that we pass the Affordable Care Act, to be in a position where we, in fact, took almost a $90 billion act that would...
That's a bold statement, fucker.
Putting us in a position where I was able to end able to end the issue of gun sales in terms of assault weapons.
He's standing between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders while saying this.
The question is, who's going to be able to get it done? How can you get it done? And I'm not suggesting they can't, but I'm suggesting that that's what we should look at. And part of that requires you not
here comes and the wags are coming
tell
out.
people what it's going to cost, how you're going to do it, and why you're going to do it. That's the way to get it done. Presidents are supposed to be able to persuade.
Just to clarify, Vice President, who are you saying is being vague?
Well, the senator said she's being vague on the issue of, actually both of them being vague on the issue of the Medicare for all. No, look, here's the deal. Come on. It costs $30 trillion. Guess what? That's over $3 trillion a year. It's part of the entire federal budget. Let me finish, okay?
You'll both get it.
If you eliminated the entire Pentagon, every single thing, plane, ship, troop, the buildings, everything, satellites, it would get you, it would pay for...
Here comes some grade A bullshit.
4 months. Where do you get the rest? Where does it come from?
A fun fact, we currently spend $32 trillion
with Republicans and getting
already.
things done. But you know what you also got done, and I say this as a good friend. You got the disastrous war in Iraq done. You got a bankruptcy bill which is hurting middle-class families all over this country. You got trade agreements like NAFTA and PNTR with China done, which have cost us 4 million jobs. And let's get to Medicare for all. Let's be honest. We spend twice as much per person as do the people of any other major country on earth. And the answer is, if we have the guts, and I would like to see the Democratic Party have that guts, to stand up to the drug companies and the insurance companies and tell them that the function of health care is to guarantee care to all people, not to make $100 billion in profit. If we stood together, we could create the greatest health care
Vice
system
President Biden, you
in
can
the world.
respond, and then Senator Warren.
We can do that without Medicare for all. We can do that by adding a public option. We can.
No,
and we can afford to do it.
You got to take on the greed and the profiteering of the healthcare industry.
Let him respond, Vice President.
The greed and profiteering of those insurance companies. They are as much against my bill as they are anybody else. They were strongly against Obamacare. They know it costs them. And
They fucking wrote it.
The right of people to choose, the 160 million people out there who've negotiated their health insurance, and they want to keep it. They should have a right to keep it.
Senator Warren, your response.
So you started this question with how you got something done. You know, following the financial crash of 2008, I had an idea for a consumer agency that would keep giant banks from cheating people. And all of the Washington insiders and strategic geniuses said, don't even try, because you will never get it passed. And sure enough, The big banks fought us, the Republicans fought us, some of the Democrats fought us, but we got that agency passed into law. It has now forced big banks to return more than $12 billion directly to people they cheated. I served in the Obama administration. I know what we can do by executive authority, and I will use it. In Congress, on the first day, I will pass my anti-corruption bill, which will beat back the influence of money and repeal the filibuster. And the third, we want to get something done in America. We have to get out there and fight for the things that touch people's lives.
I agreed with, she should reference me. I agreed with the great job she did. And I went on the floor and got you votes. I got votes for that bill. I convinced people to vote for it. So let's get those things straight, too.
Senator Warren, do you want to respond?
Cool.
I am deeply grateful to President Obama, who fought so hard to make sure that agency was passed into law. And I am deeply grateful to every single person who fought for it and who helped pass it.
Get fucking curved, Jesus.
Understand.
You did a hell of a job of your job.
Thank you. But
What?
understand this. It was a dream big, fight hard. People told me, go for something little. Go for something small. Go for something that the big corporations will be able to accept. I said, no, let's go for an agency that will make structural change in our economy. And
Senator,
President Obama said, I will fight for that, and he sometimes had to fight against people in his own administration. We have to be willing to make good, big structural change.
Mayor Buttigieg, which is the right vision for a Democrat to beat Donald Trump? That's the essential question.
He has no idea.
For every argument that I've witnessed like this, I could pay for college for everybody. We need to move past what has been consuming this whole political space for as long as I've been alive. We're being offered a false choice. I don't agree with the vice president that Trump is an aberration. I don't agree that there's any such thing as back to normal. Because here in the industrial Midwest, definitely where I live, normal didn't work. That's part of how we got here. That's part of how a guy like Donald Trump managed to get within cheating distance of the Oval Office in the first place. But I also don't agree with Senator Warren that the only way forward is infinite partisan combat. Yes, we have to fight. Absolutely, we have to fight for the big changes at hand, but it's going to take more than fighting. Once again, I want to take you back to that day after Trump has stopped being president. Think about what the president can do to unify a new American majority for some of the boldest things we've attempted in my lifetime. Medicare for all who want it. Actually getting something done on immigration for the first time since the assault weapons ban, which would be a huge deal. Making college free for low and middle income students, yet there's some here on this stage who say it doesn't count unless we go even further. Free college for low and middle income students isn't good enough unless we're also paying for the children of billionaires. Immigration reform isn't enough unless we also decriminalize border crossings. We have an opportunity to do the biggest things we've done in my lifetime.
I did not say back to normal.
Thank you, Mayor. Senator Klobuchar. Senator Klobuchar.
You know, this isn't a flyover part of the country to me. The heartland is where I live. And I want to win those states that we lost last time. And I have bold ideas to get us there. And I think just because they're different than Elizabeth's doesn't mean they're bold. But we can't get any of this done on climate change or immigration reform unless they win. And what I have done is win. And the only one up here, time and time again, the reddest of red districts. Michelle Bachmann. I read that.
It's because you're a fucking Republican.
Rural districts that border Iowa and North and South Dakota. And I do it by going not just where it's comfortable, but where it's uncomfortable. And that is why I have been in Pennsylvania and in Michigan and in Wisconsin and all over Ohio and in Iowa. Because I think we need to build a blue Democratic wall around those states and make Donald Trump pay for it.
Senator Warren, she referenced...
What a cool line. Like off the cuff.
People who are struggling to pay health care are fighting today. People who are getting crushed by student loans are in a fight today. People who are getting stopped by the police or paid less because of the color of their skin are in a fight today. And anyone who doesn't understand that Americans are already in these fights is not someone who's likely to win them. For me, this is about knowing what's broken, knowing how to fix it, and yes, I'm willing to get out there and fight for it.
Senator Sanders, Senator Sanders, why is your approach more likely to beat President Trump?
I'll tell you why.
Please
and here's the radical reason why. It's what the American people want.
Yes.
All right? The American people do not want tax breaks for billionaires. They want the rich to start paying their fair share of taxes. Poll came out yesterday. 71% of Democrats support Medicare for all. The people of this country understand that we've got to make public colleges and universities tuition free. And more Americans, including Republicans, understand we need bold action if we're going to save this planet for our children and our grandchildren. The way you win an election in this time in history is not the same old, same old. You have to inspire people. You have to excite people. You got to bring working people and young people and poor people into the political process because they know you stand for them, not corporate America.
Congressman O'Rourke, is political revolution what the American people want? Your response.
There was some talk
No, they don't.
Big things done. When I was first elected to Congress, I found that El Paso, Texas had the worst wait times in the country to see a mental health care provider at the VA. I don't know how sensational or exciting that was to everyone in the country, or even most people in El Paso, but it was important to those veterans who I served.
Do you care? Do you care if I turn him down? I just
hiring up the psychiatrists and
I
psychologists.
just can't fucking stand his voice. Just listening to him speak.
Lives on the line for this country, and we were able to do that. And we took what we learned and we applied it to.
All right, yeah, I need a break from this. I need a break from listening to fucking Beto O'Rourke. You want to hear? Fine.
And then in Texas, one of what was thought to be the reddest states in the country, going to every single county, talking about this progressive agenda and winning more votes than any Democrat has ever won. That's the way that we defeat Donald Trump in November of 2020.
Thank you. We have to take a quick break. The CNN New York Times debate live.
Oh, thank God.
Right after this.
All right, so we've had another great fucking break here. Well, what happened? Joe Biden said, standing next to Bernie Sanders, who got Amazon workers a $15 minimum wage without even being the fucking president, and Elizabeth Warren, who created the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, said, I'm the only one up here who got anything big done. So that was a riot. You know, that was fun. So who's the top three? Warren, Sanders, Yang? I wouldn't put Warren in top three. Warren, I put in the shitty group, but I put Warren at the very top of the shitty group. She's like, you know, my opinion on Warren is a shrug. I shrug my shoulders. I go, all right. She's got some bad spots that for me are a no-go. I don't like her foreign policy. I don't like how she's been wish-washy on everything she says she's for, like Medicare for all. It took her a while to come around to that, unlike Bernie, who's been for it forever. So, top three popularity-wise, it's Biden, Warren, and Sanders. So that's popularity-wise. But for me, the three fuckers on the stage are Bernie, Warren, Bernie, Yang, and Gabbard. And Gabbard won't win. Don't fool yourselves. I like her. She's not gonna win. She's just not gonna win. But I must support her because she's she does good. But yeah, we got to listen to. I guess I was sort of vaguely surprised at Cory Booker's answer when he was asked about abortion, because I thought he was just going to say some bullshit. And he was like, yeah, I'll make a division in government. I guess I've not heard that one before. That was a little shocking to me. So then what happened? Got Pete Buttigieg bringing up his Medicare for all who want it nonsense, which is complete fucking horseshit. Khonjin, what do you predict the next pop culture reference will be? Someone might reference Johnny Carson I don't know. So let's go through them. Let's see how the night's been so far. Tulsi's had I don't know. She barely gets any questions. She answers them fine enough, but look, she's fucked. Tom Steyer, fuck you. Like, he hasn't had any particularly bad answers, but by virtue of why he's here, I cannot take him seriously at all. There was a few where you sort of roll your eyes, but anyway. Cory Booker, he's still Cory Booker. He had one good answer, and it doesn't even matter. Khonjin and Cory say something interesting. Yeah, I thought his answer on abortion was interesting. If only because he actually said something of, like, vaguely hinted at something he would do. He said he'd make it a part of he'd make it a government agency. So I thought it was an interesting answer. Julian Castro, I don't think he's having a good night. He's done a good job parroting what everyone else says, except it's coming out of his mouth. But, at the last debate, even though I don't like him, he had a good night. He's not having a good night. I think Yang's doing pretty well. He's actually inserting himself into these conversations without coming off like he's confrontationally looking for an extra few minutes to chirp in. Which I guess, the past debates have served him well in that, since he's never interjected. Now that he has, I think it does make him look good.
We are back with the CNN New York Times Democratic presidential debate. We have time for one more question that we would like all of you to weigh in on. Last week, Ellen DeGeneres was criticized after she and former President...
Fucking are you kidding me?
...together at a football game. Ellen defended their friendship, saying we're all different, and I think that we've forgotten that that's okay, that we're all different. So, in that spirit, we'd like you...
You're running for president of the free fucking world!
...us what impacts it's had on you and your beliefs. Secretary Castro, let's begin with you.
Well, first of all, thank you to Mark, thank you, Anderson, and thank you,
Shut
Aaron,
up!
CNN, and New York Times, and everybody who's here tonight. Some of the most interesting friendships that I've had have been with people different from me, either people older than me that had a lot to teach.
If no one calls Bush a war criminal, this question was a waste.
Also, teachers, as I was growing up, people that had a life experience
Arkanirlock, I'm right there with
was
you.
beyond mine, and sometimes also, and this goes to the heart of your question, I think, people who thought differently from me. Folks that I considered and have considered friends, and I think that there's a value to that.
Oh,
I
no.
think that should be reflected more in
I hope Yang doesn't bungle this one.
I also believe,
I'm kind of afraid he
the
could.
incident last week with Ellen and George W. Bush, I completely understood what she was saying about being kind to others. I believe that we should be more kind to other folks. I also believe
I am kind of waiting on, like, I'm nervous of what Bernie and Yang will say. I'm afraid he'll give him a pass.
Of having done something or not done something.
We're going to see if Bernie is true, the true fucker.
And also hold them accountable for their actions. And there are people, whether it's our former president, George W. Bush, or others, that should be held accountable. Just as we should be kind, we shouldn't be made to feel shameful about holding people accountable for what they've done.
Congresswoman Gabbard.
All right, a very half and half non-committal answer.
Many of you know we greet each other with aloha. It's not a word that means hello and goodbye. It actually means something much more powerful than that. It means I come to you with respect and a recognition that we are all connected. We are all brothers and sisters. We are all God's children. So I've developed friendships that some people may be surprised about within the Washington circles, especially with Republicans like Trey Gowdy, for example. He and I disagree a lot and very strongly on a lot of political issues. We've developed a friendship that's based on respect, and he's been there for me during some personally challenging times. The challenge before us today is that our country is very divided. Donald Trump must be defeated. But we must do more than just defeat Donald Trump. We need to deliver a win for the American people. We must stand united as Americans, remembering
Tulsi.
that we are all brothers and sisters, that we are all connected. This is the kind of leadership that I
Tulsi,
seek to
don't
bring
do
as
this.
president, inspired by the example of presidents like Abraham Lincoln, who talked about how
Tulsi, you're pulling at 1%. You don't have to fucking.
When I look out at our country, I don't see deplorables. I see fellow Americans, people who I treat with respect, even when we disagree, and when we disagree strongly. I will work to restore a White House that represents.
Well, that's one disappointment that's happened.
For every American, regardless of race,
Sons of Liberty,
orientation, gender, or political affiliation. So I want to ask everyone to join me. Join me in bringing about this government of, by, and for the people that serves all the people of this country. You can visit my website, Tulsi2020.com, for more information.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Senator Klobuchar?
For me, it's John McCain, and I miss him every day. I traveled all over the world with him. And he would sometimes, when we were seated with world leaders, and they would look away from me, he'd say, Senator Klobuchar is the lead Democrat on this trip, and she will go next. And I still remember being there at his ranch. John and I went to visit him and Cindy when he was dying. And he pointed to some words in his book because he could hardly talk. And the words said this: there is nothing more liberating in life than fighting for a cause larger than yourself. That's what we're doing right now. And while we have had major debates about policy, we have to remember that what unites us is so much bigger than what divides us.
The question,
And we have
Miles
to
Duffy,
remember
is
that our job
about
is
Ellen
to not just change
DeGeneres
policy,
and Bush.
but to change the tone in our politics, to look up from our phones, to look at each other, to start talking to each other, because the way we win, and not just win the presidency, but take back the U.S. Senate, is by winning big. And the way we win big is with that fired up Democratic base that's out there today, but it is also about bringing in independents and moderate Republicans. I can lead this, and I ask you to
Danielle
join me,
just
because I've done
texted
it
me
before, and I will
saying
do it
how
again.
stupid this question is.
AmyKlobuchar.com. Join our team. Thank
Senator,
you.
thank you very much. Mr. Steyer, tell us about your most surprising friendship.
So I'm friends with a woman from Denmark, South Carolina, named Deanna Barry, who's fighting for clean water and environmental justice.
Wow, that's surprising that you're friends with them.
She's a different gender, she's a different race, she's from a different culture. But she reminds me of my parents in terms of my mother was a school teacher in the New York public schools. And
Come on, dude!
My father was the first generation in his family to go to college. My grandfather was a plumber.
This is pretty fucking shocking, you know?
And he ended up prosecuting.
Yeah, when you really think about it.
And when I asked him what that experience meant, he said
She was a gamer, she was a girl. It was crazy shit. It's quite surprising, I know.
and that's why I started the
Fuck you, Tom Steyer, you fucking Bill Nye lookalike dumbass. I can't believe this question exists.
I saw that there was a terrible threat to the safety and health of every American in terms of the climate crisis. And I've been fighting those companies with the help of the American people ever since successfully. And that's why I'm running for president. Because our government has failed, it's been bought by corporations, and it's absolutely essential to return power to the people. I have been doing exactly what my parents
Thank you, Mr. Steyer.
which is to take on the biggest problems in America directly and fight for them every
Thank you.
day.
Thank you, Mr. Steyer.
Please escort him out of the building, please.
I've always tried to bring people in to the solutions that we have to our common challenges, regardless of the differences. I did that as a small business owner more than 20 years ago.
And I just have to say that George Bush is a war criminal. That's right. Someone had to come out and say it, and I have the bravery, the spine to do this. George Bush is a war criminal, and Dick Cheney needs to be assassinated via firing squad. You know, I know the crowd's going wild right now. I know that this is a rather bold take on what's going on here. But if George Bush was in my house right now, I would tear him apart by hand. I would relish in every second of it. And any one of you who denounces me or my presidency is a fucking pussy bitch. So that's pretty much my take on things. I'm glad I was able to say something interesting this time around.
What we had in common. By the end of that trip, not only had we formed a friendship,
but we also formed a giant gun with which to kill George Bush, a war criminal, with. It was quite a liberating experience. He is dead now.
work together on an otherwise contentious issue. And then across Texas, I mentioned winning more votes than any Democrat. We won independents and Republicans in record numbers as well. I will bring people in and together.
We will shoot them. Together we will shoot them after I bring them in. I am a murderer. That is basically what I'm confessing here tonight.
I have so many I don't even know where to count. I was the mayor of a large city with a Republican governor. He and I had to form a friendship, even though I can write a dissertation on our disagreements. When I got to the United States Senate, I went there with the purpose of making friendships across the aisle. I go to Bible study in Chairman Inhofe's office. He and I passed legislation together to help homeless foster kids. I went out to try to invite every one of my Republican colleagues to dinner. And let me again say, finding a dinner in a restaurant, agreeing on one with Ted Cruz was a very difficult thing. I'm a vegan and he's a meat-eating Texan. But I'll tell you this right now. This is the moment in America that this is our test. The spirit of our country, I believe in the values of rugged individualism and self-reliance, but think about our history. Rugged individualism didn't get us to the moon. It didn't beat the Nazis. It didn't map the human genome. It didn't beat Jim Crow. Everything we did in this country, big, and Vice President, we have done so many big things. The fact that there's an openly gay man, a black woman, all of us on this stage are because we in the past are all inheritors of a legacy of common struggle and common purpose. This election is not a referendum on one guy in one office. It's a referendum on who we are and who we must be to each other.
Wait, who's gay? Pete Buttigieg is gay.
Us Democrats that can unite us all, not throw elbows at other Democrats that are unfair, because the preparation is being the leader that can revive civic grace in our country, teach us a more courageous empathy, and remind America that patriotism is love of country. And you cannot love your country unless you love your fellow countrymen and women. And love is not sentimentality, it's not anemic. Love is struggle, love is sacrifice. Love is the words of our founders who said at the end of the Declaration of Independence
I can't believe
that if
this is
we're
a
ever going to make
fucking
it as a
question.
nation, we must mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. I am running for president to restore that sacred honor. And if you believe in it like I do, please
Mr. Hawkins.
join me by going to CoryBooker.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Yang?
First, I want to thank all the voters tuned in at home. If you don't feel like you answered your you got your question answered tonight, it's understandable. There are 12 of us. I'm going to be answering voter questions for 10 straight hours this Friday. My website, yang2020.com.
Yeah, buddy.
And if you ask your question tonight, there's a better chance I'll get to it. My surprising friendship. It's been so much fun running for president because I've gotten to meet so many Americans I never would have gotten to meet otherwise. The friendship that sticks out for me is a guy named Fred, who's an avid Trump supporter, a trucker. He spent some time in jail. I heard about his experiences trying to get other people off of drugs. And I'm happy to see that after our ride together, he actually said that he would move from Donald Trump to the campaign, which was a thrill for me, and we've remained in touch ever since. The truth is that what happened to the 4 million manufacturing workers here in Ohio and Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Iowa did not care about our political party. The fourth industrial revolution is now migrating from manufacturing workers to retail, call centers, transportation, as well as to white-collar workers like attorneys, pharmacists, and radiologists. It does not care about our party. Donald Trump had a set of solutions in 2016. What did he say?
My surprising friend is a guy named Fred. Fred is a pretty surprising guy in politics.
We have to accelerate our economy and society as quickly as possible.
The YouTuber Fred is the most surprising.
It is not left, it is not right, it is forward, and that is where we must take the country in 2020.
Mr. Yang, thank you very much. Senator Harris.
Oh, shit.
Thank you. Probably Rand Paul. He and I invited him to join me on a bill to end the money bail system in the United States.
I hope Bernie.
On almost nothing, but
all right, I don't care about this person, so they can go fuck themselves. But all right, Bernie has 2 answers that he can give to continue my faith. The first answer is, bullshit framing aside. George Bush is a war criminal. There, I said it. I just had to say it. It's something that needed to be said. He is a war criminal and should be locked up. Or he says, I have to agree with my friend Mr. Yang here. I also like Fred. Fred's a very good man, wildly misunderstood. I'm gonna have to see Fred. So that's all he's got here. So let's take a look in a book, shall we?
They got married, but when I was 5, that marriage ended. But my mother convinced us that we could do anything. And so I became the first woman Attorney General of California, the second black woman elected to the United States Senate. And I will tell you, that's part of why I'm running, because Donald Trump...
All right. So what's really unfortunate is, I think I know what Bernie is going to say. He's probably going to say his weird friend is that Arizona senator that helped him pass the bill to stop the war in Yemen. That is what I assume Bernie's going to say. I forget his name, but I'm fairly certain that's what his answer is going to be. So let's take a look.
Well, I think about the friendships that I formed in the military. People who were radically different from me, different generation, different race, definitely different politics. And we learned to trust each other with our lives. When they got into my vehicle and when we went outside the wire, they didn't care if I was going home to a boyfriend or a girlfriend. They didn't care what country my dad immigrated from and whether he was documented or not. We just learned to trust each other. In fact, the fact that I want every American to have that experience without having to go to war to get there is one of the reasons why I believe national service is so important. I guess I'll follow in the pattern tonight and point out you could go to peteforamerica.com and read all about it. It's also about building a sense of belonging in this country, because I think that's what friendship and that's what service can create. And I think we have a crisis of belonging in this country that is helping to explain so many of our problems, from our politics being what it is, to the fact that people are self-medicating and we're seeing a rise in the deaths from despair. I believe only the president can build a sense of belonging and purpose for the entire country. The purpose of the presidency is not the glorification of the president. It is the unification of the American people. And I'm asking for your vote to be that president. When the dust clears over the rubble of our norms and institutions at the end of the Trump presidency, pick up the pieces and guide us toward a better future.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Senator Sanders?
Here we go.
When I was chairman of the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs, I tried to get through the most comprehensive piece of veterans legislation in modern American history, and I failed. I only had 2 Republicans to vote with me in the Senate. So we had to go back to the drawing board, and I worked with John McCain. And I certainly did not get in that legislation, working with McCain, all that I wanted. But it turned out that we were able to pass a very, very significant piece of legislation, including $5 billion more for the Veterans Administration. More recently, I worked with a very conservative Republican from Utah, Mike Lee. And Mike understood, although he and I disagree on everything, that the U.S. involvement in the Saudi-led war in Yemen was a catastrophic disaster for the people of Yemen. And for the first time in 45 years, we were able to get the War Powers Act utilized and get the votes to get the U.S. troops out of that area. But I think at the end of the day, what I appreciate is that we have got to end the hatred that Trump is fostering on our people, the divisiveness, trying to divide us up by the color of our skin or where we were born or our sexual orientation or our religion. And there is no job that I would undertake with more passion than bringing our people together around an agenda that works for every man, woman, and child in this country, rather than the corporate elite and the 1%. A progressive agenda that stands for all is the way that we transform this country.
Senator Sanders, thank you. Senator Warren?
You asked about a surprising friend. For me, it would be Charles Freed. 27 years ago, when I was under consideration for a job, he was someone who had been George Bush the First, Solicitor General, a deeply principled Republican. And we didn't agree on much. I was far more liberal than he was. But he also was
Sorry,
willing to listen
I
to
forgot
my
I
heart
was
about what's
streaming.
happening to America's middle class. And Charles engaged with it over and over, and ultimately is the person who made sure I got the job. You know, I grew up out in Oklahoma. I have 3 older brothers. They all served in the military. 2 of the 3 are still Republicans. I love all 3 of my brothers. And there are a lot of things that we're divided on. But there are core things that we believe in together. We want to see
Twitter.
all of our children get a good start in life. We don't want to see any of our friends or neighbors not get covered by health care. We're willing
Wow,
to
look
get
at all
out
this
there
fun
for the things
Yang
we believe in.
tweets.
Look, people across this country, whether they're Democrats, Independents,
Some
or
unusual
Republicans,
video.
they know what's broken. They know what's better and better.
Yeah, I
and
hope you
better
like the
for a
debates.
thinner and thinner and thinner.
Why is
slice
JonTron
at the
in my
top
timeline?
And
Oh.
leaving everyone else
Well,
behind.
that's unfortunate.
People across this country, regardless of party, are ready to say,
Yeah, you
no
like
more.
this? Oh,
we
boy.
want an America that works for everyone. 2020 is our moment in history.
Oh, this is fun.
It is a deep honor to be here, to be in this fight. I know what's broken. I know how to fix it. And we are building a grassroots movement to
all right.
get it done that includes everyone.
Thank you, Senator Warren. Vice President Biden?
This is reassuring in the fact that we're all acknowledging that we have to reach across the aisle to get things done. No other way to get anything done in this country. The 2 people maybe would surprise you the most were, he's been mentioned twice, but John McCain. John McCain worked for me when he worked in the Navy, and he was assigned to me to travel around the world. We became close friends.
Yeah, I don't give a
Became
shit about
very close friends with my wife Jill. Visited our home. He
I
was there
look
with
at
his children.
Sonic.
And on his deathbed, he asked me to do his eulogy. John, I would say to John, you didn't see a war you never wanted to fight, and he'd say, you didn't see a problem you never wanted to solve. But he was a great man of principle. He was honorable. He was honorable. And one of the things, that's the reason why I'm running. We
Yeah.
have to restore the soul of this country. That's why I'm doing this. In fact, this president has ripped the soul out of this country,
Now
divided
we're-
us in ways
we've
that
hit
are
where we were.
absolutely outrageous. A liar, he cheats, he does not do anything to promote people generally. Secondly, we have to rebuild the middle class. And the only way we're going to do that is to be able to reach across the aisle. My dad used to say, a job's about a lot more than a paycheck, Joey. It's about your dignity. We have to restore people's dignity. And lastly, we have to unite the country because, folks, it's time we stop walking around with our heads down. We are better positioned.
The reason
than
there's
any
lots
country
of
in the
tweets
world
from the
to
same
own
guy
the
is
21st
because
century.
he's
So for
live
God's
tweeting
sake,
this debate.
Get up and remember, this is the United States of America. There's nothing we've been unable to do when we decide we're going to do it. Nothing at all. Period.
Candidates, thank you. That concludes the 4th Democratic presidential debate. We want to thank Otterbein University
Oh
for
my
hosting
God.
us. Now please stay tuned for CNN for special coverage of tonight's debate with Jake Tapper and Chris Cuomo.
So let's talk about this because oh shit. There. But anyway, this fucking debates. You know, I said I was gonna stream them. I hate this. God, I hate this. There's some good moments in there, like whatever that fucking weird exchange was with Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden. It's like, you did a hell of a good job. Oh, thank you. And Tom Steyer saying his most surprising friend was a girl. That was pretty funny, but God, this is just awful. It's like 3 hours of, and that was disappointing, you know, having Tulsi up there, who's fucked, by the way, not biting at it. Bernie is, you know, a little higher in the polls, so I guess I know why, but fuck, dude. That was disappointing. Didn't someone say Chevy Cavalier? Oh yeah, that was Pete Buttigieg. It's like, yeah, I remember when I was getting driven in my Chevy Cavalier. Khonjin, any recommendations for countries to flee to? I don't know. I have been Nova Scotia specifically. Is that where they have that fucking enhanced immigration sort of policy going on? But anyway, you know, I watched these debates because there was a lot of big political scoring going on in the earlier ones, and now it doesn't seem to be advancing beyond that. I think the only one who really got bitch slapped tonight was Pete Buttigieg Beto O'Rourke by Pete Buttigieg of all people. Just came in and was like, you don't have a plan and you're a child, and then he died. But it was, I will say though, I think this was a really good night for Andrew Yang. I think that, you know, it's not like a legendary performance, but I feel like this is going to do Yang some good. I think he, you know, is fine. I think Bernie did fine. You know, he stuck to his usual points, but, you know, at the last debate, it sounded like he was about to die, and then he had a heart attack, and now he sounds like he's back, you know, he's back and he's ready. So I think it's good for Bernie showing some strength. Good for Yang just showing that he'll insert himself into these conversations, and, you know, he'd come out of them unscathed. They wouldn't really rebuke him. But everyone else was just... It's hard to even gauge. Like, you know how you feel about it, but I don't know what mainstream media feels about it. They're probably going to say Joe had a good night because, you know, gotta kiss the fucking ring with Joe Biden. Let's see. In fact, they're talking about it right now. Let's see what they say.
Clearly, Elizabeth Warren was the one that was being attacked, not Joe Biden as much as Warren.
And what do you think, Jess? First of all, just the general question. Was Elizabeth Warren able to take a punch? Because this is the first time we really saw a lot of people going after her and her proposals.
Yeah, and I think absolutely she was. I think she was strong throughout the debate, probably the weakest at the very beginning when there was sort of a pile on Medicare for All. But by the end, she seemed not just capable of taking a punch, but landing a counter one at the same time. When Joe Biden made that crack about you were good enough at your job, when he was talking about setting up the CFPB, which was the federal agency that Elizabeth Warren
I think he said
created.
You did a good job.
You did a good job at your job. It was a little bit like a you're likable enough Hillary moment, and I think women see that and just cringe. Like, everybody has had that sort of moment in the workplace, and we got to see it on the debate tonight. She used it well.
What'd you think, Van?
I guess so, but anyway. So I guess the narrative is Warren wins. I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, she also didn't do badly, I don't think. I don't think she ever said, I don't recall anything where I'm like, oh my God. She sustained herself. I don't think anything really pulled her down. But, yeah, was Joe Biden just circle gaming someone? I think, clip it. You gotta go back. There's a new development here. This is but anyway, yeah, it's just unfortunate. It's such a drag, and I feel like, God, I feel like I can't fucking like stand this bullshit anymore. I might just not even watch the next one. I'll watch like the recaps of it. I'm so exhausted by this. Jesus. Well, anyways, if there is popular demand for me to sit through another one of these shitholes, I will. But otherwise, I'm not planning on it. This sucks. This fucking sucks balls. Oh my God. Well, anyway, that's My verdict, Yang had a good night. I think he did the best of all of them, but that's just my 2 cents and bias. So, anyways, yeah, I'd love to be a moderator for one of these. Be like, Kamala Harris. Yeah, you say you're for legalizing marijuana. You threw people in jail and tried to get a man killed. Why'd you do that? What was that about? Oh, he wasn't circle gaming. He was trying to take a selfie. Jesus. Like, Beto O'Rourke, can you count to 3? Can you do it? I'll give you 5 seconds. Can you count to 5? What else? Tom Steyer, who the fuck are you? Have you ever met a woman? I guess not. Jesus. So, Amy Klobuchar, are you going to come out of the closet and admit you're a Republican? Fucking Julian Castro, you're polling at 1%. When should you quit? Just, I'd ask the hard-hitting questions. Be like, yeah, I was watching SpongeBob the other day, the episode where he's blowing bubbles to Patrick and sending messages. Is George Bush a war criminal? The correct questions you should be asking. Well, anyway, I'm done with this shit. I'm gonna go to bed, or maybe not. I hope you all do something that makes you feel happy. Do something fun. Don't do this shit. All right. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye. Bye. Goodbye.